I never thought my life would become a scene out of a tragic movie. I was just a man, a husband, trusting, and perhaps naive. I found her in a hotel room, with him, betraying everything we had built. Rage took over me, and in that moment I became someone I didn't recognize. I dragged him out, the world around us frozen in shock. My wife, the woman I loved, reduced to a figure of guilt and regret. Courtrooms, therapy sessions, and broken promises followed. Each image burns into my soul, a constant reminder of the life that crumbled before my eyes. The little girl wriggled on her lap, making it tough to braid her hair. She loved that French braid. It was surprising to see a 5-year-old with so much hair. "Crystal Ann, sit still or we'll be late for church. What's bothering you?" "Granny, Cousin Billy said you're a Yankee. Is that true?" "First of all, it's were, not was. Here comes Gramps. Ask him." Gwen noticed her standing in the office doorway with a strange look on her face. She was her husband's oldest friend, who moved from Birmingham to Boston with him. Gwen never really took to her. Her name was Crystal Ann Montgomery, but everyone called her Dixie. She was short, with red hair and green eyes. Her good looks and soft Southern accent had all the men at the office wrapped around her finger, even the married ones. Anything she suggested became a rule. She flirted a lot, but was never rude. She never dated anyone at work, but was seen with many eligible men over the years. She never settled down, though. "Need something, Crystal Ann?" Gwen asked. She refused to call her Dixie. "I've been hearing things, dear, bad things. Thought I'd drop by to check." Her green eyes were cold, showing no friendship at all. Her words made Gwen angry. "What you hear isn't my concern. Now I'm sure you have work to do." Crystal didn't back off. "Sorry, dear," she retorted, her accent thicker. "When you married Hardy, you became my business. I never liked you and didn't care what happened to you. I tried to talk him out of marrying you, but love is blind, and he did it anyway. Now you've messed up, and I'm warning you for his sake." She paused to gather her thoughts. "You don't really know him. He kept parts of his past hidden because he feared they'd scare you away. I'm telling you for your own good. Hardy believes in an eye for an eye. When he finds out what you did, stay far away or it might end badly for you. I'm not warning you to protect you, but to protect him." By now, Gwen was furious. She didn't understand Crystal's intrusion and felt it wasn't her business. Dripping with sarcasm, she replied, "Well, Miss Montgomery, thank you for your concern, however small it is. But Hardy and I are fine, despite what you hear. Now, I'm sure you have work to do." If she thought that would make Crystal leave, she was wrong. "Don't worry about me, dear. I'm on lunch. If you're fine with your husband, why did Allan post 'Blonde on Blonde is back' on his corporate Facebook? I just wanted to save Hardy some pain. But you're either in denial or just don't care. I've said my piece, but remember this. Like I said, I did it for Hardy, not you. Don't forget he's not one of those polished northern guys you're used to. There won't be any talking or therapy. He'll act. One more thing, Hardy hates cheaters more than anything. When he finds out, I'll be there to catch him on the rebound. I've loved him since I was 14. I'd never cheat on him. I plan to be with him right away. Have a nice day, dear." With that, she strolled out, grabbing the attention of every man in the hallway. Gwen sat in shock, then checked his Facebook account. There it was for everyone to see. Paris was a huge success. Negotiations went well, and more importantly, Blonde on Blonde is back. Things can't get better. Blonde on Blonde was his pet name for them when they were close. He grew his hair long for a rebel look, saying their long hair made them a beautiful couple. Her dad and senior staff thought he looked girly, but he was good at his job, so they let it be. She picked up the phone and called his extension. He answered, recognizing her number. "Hi, babe. What's up?" "Allan, are you crazy? What's with the Blonde on Blonde post on Facebook? Are you trying to get me divorced or fired? If Dad sees this, you'll be fired instantly, and it won't go well for me either. I don't think he'd fire his only child, but who knows?" She was nearly shouting by the end. "Hold on, babe. Your dad would never fire you. You're the second best contract lawyer he's got right after me. Everything will be cool, just stay calm." Not reassured, she tried to reason with him. "Look, Paris was a mistake. If I hadn't been drunk, it wouldn't have happened. My husband must not find out. Allan didn't care. He wanted everyone to know. He wanted Gwen back. He almost had her until her dad brought that guy up from Alabama. You didn't think it was a mistake when you were calling my name. Your husband doesn't scare me. I'm a third-degree black belt. I won't go looking for him, but if he pushes, he'll get more than his feelings hurt. Allan, are you out of your mind? Don't underestimate him. He's served 2 tours in Iraq. He's used to taking people down. Now, keep quiet. Understand? He nodded, but he didn't plan to stay quiet. He just wanted to keep her calm. When she hung up, he leaned back in his chair with a smile. He had almost won her over before. This time, he wouldn't let her go. He knew her weaknesses and would use them to his advantage. She was beautiful and smart enough, but more importantly, she was the only child of a very rich man. When her father died, she'd inherit everything. Plus, her grandma had left her a big trust fund. Together, it was worth hundreds of millions. Yes, life was going to be very good for him soon. Smiling, he picked up the phone. Gwen sat at her desk, angry. How had she gotten into this mess? She hoped Allan would keep his promise. She looked at the picture on her desk and thought about when she was dating him. She had chased after him, always. His southern charm, good looks, and strong presence made every woman notice him. He didn't seem to see it and treated everyone with respect. But the way he looked at them like they were the only woman in the world made them uneasy. One woman said his look was controlled, but with something wild underneath. "Who is that?" she asked her assistant one day, watching him walk down the hall. Lisa laughed. "Calm down. That's Hardy Wilkes, the new lawyer your dad brought from the Birmingham office. He handles all the free legal work now. He's nice but keeps to himself. I don't think he's gay, but he doesn't seem interested in women. I tried to get his attention, but he didn't notice." Gwen mentioned him at her regular Sunday lunch with her dad. "I heard you brought a lawyer from the Alabama office. Is he any good?" She often wondered why her dad kept the Birmingham office open. Her great-grandfather had opened it to help a steel baron he worked with. It was a good move, and they got many steel bosses as clients. But the steel business was almost dead now. The office was just a favor to a few old tycoons. But it still made money and seemed special to her dad. Her dad laughed. "Of course you noticed a handsome man joining the firm. His name is Hardy Wilkes. He grew up in northern Alabama and went to college on the GI Bill. We fund a scholarship at his college, and I met him there. He'll fool you with that friendly charm, but has a sharp mind. I saw him outsmart a practicing lawyer at a mock trial in his second year. I hired him on the spot. When he got his license, he started working for me. He doesn't care about money, so I let him run the free legal work in Birmingham. He only takes cases where he thinks the person is innocent and has a 93% success rate." He looked at her thoughtfully. She had a habit of falling in love at the wrong time. She had been engaged twice, and both times it didn't work out because she cheated. "Stay away from him, Gwen. You don't know how he thinks. He has no experience with your world, and I don't think he would fit in. Plus, I don't think you could control him, and I know how important that is to you. Daddy, do you think I chase every man I find attractive?" He just smiled. It was a tough fight. He was polite and nice, but just not interested. She was used to getting what she wanted and felt insulted. Finally, she had him cornered. There was a fancy dinner for Amnesty International, a fundraiser her father supported. He was supposed to speak, but a bad flu kept him home. He asked Hardy to speak instead. Hardy would represent the firm, and she would represent the family. She picked him up in a limo. Gwen spent a lot of time and money to look her best. She wore a long, shiny gray dress, a diamond necklace, bracelets, and earrings. Her blonde hair was perfect. She looked stunning. He wore a simple black tux but looked very handsome in it. His nearly white blonde hair was nicely styled, and his gray eyes and white teeth made him look great. The local press was there in force. This was a big event, and all the important people were there. As hosts and main donors, they were photographed a lot. They made the front page, the business section, and the society section in Sunday's paper. The front page called them Gwen Cannaday, contract law expert and daughter of the head of Cannaday & Associates, and Hardy Wilkes, top defense lawyer from the same firm. The business section talked about the economics of free legal cases for big firms, and the society page wondered if they were a couple and if the Cannaday wild child was finally settling down. The night was a big success in terms of money raised and free legal hours promised by various firms. Hardy gave a heartfelt speech about the cause. They mingled, with her holding onto his arm like it was a lifeline, saying it kept the unwanted attention away. She was careful to be well-behaved, but sometimes flirty, with light touches and whispers. By the end of the night, she was more clear-headed than usual, though he had drunk more wine than he typically did. The ride back home was calm. She sat close to him but didn't cling. She felt that if she came on too strong, he might get scared and leave. He dropped her off at her dad's big house instead of her own place. To her surprise, he agreed to have a coffee before heading out. They talked for 45 minutes, shared a gentle kiss, and then he left. She felt like a teenager again, hugging herself as the door closed behind him. She had forgotten how good that felt. Then she checked on her dad before going to her old room. As she fell asleep, she thought of his smile. After that, she found several events that needed him to go with her. It's just business, she told herself. Soon they were dating. Their relationship was tough because she had to make all the moves. He really liked her, but wouldn't show it. First, she broke up with Allan. He was smart and fun, but she didn't love him. They sometimes used drugs for fun, but that made her uneasy. Plus, their relationship had no future. Allan wasn't happy at first, but then calmed down and wished her well. He reminded her he'd always be there if she needed him. Her dad was serious when he found out about her new relationship. Stay away from him, honey. He's a good man, and you could hurt him easily. He's from a different world. His values and plans are probably very different from yours. You'll end up breaking his heart. Don't worry, Dad. It's not serious. I won't hurt him. He probably won't even remember me in 2 years. I like him. He's fun, she replied. At home, she wondered what people would think of the name Gwen Cannaday Wilkes. Once they got comfortable with each other, he spent part of every date telling her why they couldn't be together long-term. I'm almost 10 years older than you. I don't have much money besides what your dad pays me. I can't keep up in your world, and I don't want to. I'm a simple man, but you're complex. I want a quiet life with a good woman and a couple of kids. I don't think you like kids. She was upset and showed her temper for the first time. How would you know what I want? You never asked. Maybe I want the same thing. Maybe money and power aren't as important as the love of a good man. You'll never know unless you give me a chance. Sure, I like money and I'm used to it. But when I look at a man, I don't think about his money. I have more money now than most people can earn in 100 lifetimes. And that's not counting what I get from my dad. I'm looking for love. She calmed down a bit and teased him. Sorry, honey, but sometimes you're so thick. Are you sure you're a lawyer? I hope you kiss better than you argue. Up until their 6th date, all she got was a soft goodnight kiss. She felt frustrated emotionally. It normally took only 2 dates for her to take a man to bed if she wanted. Apparently, she had gotten to him. She had never seen his eyes so intense. He looked almost wild. He grabbed her firmly and kissed her deeply. She stiffened first, but soon gave in to the feelings. She felt overwhelmed and loved at once. When he finally pulled away, the room was silent except for their heavy breathing. He stood up quickly, said a short goodnight, and left her place. By the time she reached the door, he was long gone. She leaned against the doorframe and smiled. Gotcha. Her father was not happy, not at all. Don't do this, Gwen. It will end badly. Please, Dad, be happy for me. I truly love him. Just think, in a few years I'll give you the grandkids you want. You know he asked me for your hand? Who does that anymore? He's the best man I've ever met, Gwen. There's a lot of potential in that man. If you're unsure, let him go. I'll hold on to him until the day I die. I promise you, Dad. She won him over on their 9th date. It was an art event. She was surprised to learn he knew a lot about art. He loved impressionists and old masters, but didn't like modern art much. Pollock? Really? The man just threw paint at canvases, something a monkey could do. She loved the scream for what she called its raw emotions. She also liked folk art and the Wyeth family. Their fun argument drew a crowd, and soon others joined in. One woman seemed too friendly, and Gwen felt she had to protect her territory. She tried to keep between Hardy and the woman, but failed a few times. It didn't help that the woman was stunning and rich. Hardy sensed Gwen's discomfort and teased her by giving the woman more attention. Gwen snapped when she caught her in the ladies' room. Hardy is a fine man. I'd love to see his legal briefs sometime, the woman said. The other ladies laughed, one even saying his briefs weren't brief at all. Gwen had enough. Stay away from him, he's mine. The woman smiled sweetly, which made Gwen even angrier. You don't have to convince me, you have to convince him, she replied. The rest of the evening, Gwen stayed very close to Hardy. Why did you do that? She asked on the way home. Do what? He replied. You know what? Flirt with that woman. Couldn't she see you were mine? She's too old for you anyway. She must be, 40? That was mean. That woman, as you call her, is one of our clients. Her family has old money from Birmingham. I helped her nephew a few years ago with a small problem. She was teasing you to see your reaction, and she's 39, just 4 years older than me. He grinned. Besides, who said I was yours? His words caught her by surprise. Well, I mean, honey, stick to contract law. I'd beat you in court. She saw he was laughing at her. She slapped his shoulder. I'm just starting to see what a tricky person you are, and for your information, you're mine because I say so, because I want you to be... She could feel his eyes on her in the dark. Be careful what you wish for, little girl. It might end up different than you thought. She answered in the same serious tone. I always get what I want. If it's different, I can make it work. His mood changed again. He was grinning. Counselor, that sounds like a business deal. Ready to negotiate? She smiled back. Yes, I am. I think I can make a very good offer. They arrived at her townhouse. When he got out to walk her to the door, she turned to the driver. Well, he said, watching the car drive away, there goes my ride home. Don't worry, my dear, I'll get you home. As she turned to unlock her door, she muttered, eventually. She made a pot of coffee, knowing it was his favorite. He loved coffee, always buying new kinds and experimenting with them. He got hooked on it in Iraq. He used to joke that lots of guys came back with bad habits, but his was caffeine. She always kept some special blends for him. Excusing herself, she changed into a short robe. When she came back and sat down, his eyes went to her legs. She knew she had nice legs and moved a bit to show them off before tucking them under her on the couch. He had made the coffee and they sat, sipping in silence. I think you owe me something for being mean tonight. He was surprised, brought out of his thoughts by her words. What do you think is fair? She moved closer to him. Holding his face, she said, I think 10 kisses are a good start. Then we'll see. The first 2 kisses were gentle, the next 2 more passionate. She pulled back. Phew, I've never been so warm during negotiations. I need to get more comfortable. She untied her robe and let it fall open. He looked at her in surprise and then with desire. They spent the next half hour together, losing track of time. The next morning, she was still asleep when she felt droplets of water on her face. She looked up and saw him, freshly showered and wrapped in a towel, flicking water off himself. Good morning, sleepyhead. Do you have a razor? If I kiss you now, it'll feel rough. She stretched across the bed, making sure he saw her fit body. Do you plan to kiss me? He smiled brightly. Like in the movie, hard and often, but if you prefer it rough. He leaned over and rubbed his rough cheek on her stomach. Ouch! Okay, I get it. Gwen got off the bed and found him a razor. Hope the pink color doesn't bother you, she laughed, handing it to him. It'll be our little secret. He grinned back. Tell me what you like and I'll make sure we have it next time. His gray eyes met her blue ones. Are you sure there will be a next time? She looked back seriously. No, not just one. There will be many times. It was the answer he wanted to hear. Hardy shaved while she showered. She stuck her head out. Honey, can you wash my back? Soon he had her in his arms again, carrying her to the bed. They lay together for a few minutes before he got up. Want to take another shower and start again? No, baby, let me rest for a while. She watched him walk to the bathroom. Who knew there were so many muscles under those suits? It's not supposed to be like this, she thought. He's supposed to be the tired one, not me. Where does he get all that energy? In truth, Hardy was trying not to let his legs shake as he went to the shower. He thought of his grandfather's advice. The first time you're with a woman, boy, be strong and last long. Show her she's got a real man. Next time, be gentle and she'll know she's got a good man. Probably the best advice he ever got. Things weren't perfect afterward. but she slowly got him to see her way of thinking. The only way she got him to think about marriage was to live together for a while. They knew they were good together in one way. Socially was another matter. I grew up poor, Gwen. I've never had much. Never wanted more than to give my family a good life. I don't have your wants or your social skills. Silly man, anyone can learn. And stop worrying about money. I've told you I have enough for both of us. That's the thing, hon. It's your money, not ours. It will always be yours. I'll never touch it. If we get married, there will be a prenup saying I won't get anything if we split up, and we'll only divide what we get after the wedding. This is non-negotiable, counselor. Her dad appreciated Hardy's stance. It was typical of him, but it shocked both when her dad said he would represent Hardy in the prenup process without a fight. He made Gwen get a different lawyer from outside their firm to represent her. The meeting surprised everyone. Her dad had a firm contract. If they didn't follow it, the wedding was off. If they divorced because of differences, both would keep what they brought in. If Hardy cheated, he'd lose everything. Then, it got more complicated. Considering the big difference in their finances, if Gwen cheated before 5 years, Hardy would get $40 million, a quarter of her trust fund from her grandma. For every year they stayed married, this amount dropped by $1 million. Until after 5 years, he'd only get $1 million. Since her dad was the trustee until she turned 35 and was also a lawyer, he would manage the payout. It would be paid right away once infidelity was proven, whether they stayed married or divorced. Everyone was stunned. Her lawyer was almost yelling in protest, and Hardy was angry. Gwen felt numb. Hardy was stewing. I won't accept this. Why can't you respect my wishes? Hardy, would you marry her without my approval? He had Hardy there, knowing his strong sense of honor. No, sir, I couldn't in good conscience do that. Then this is what I need for my blessing. You're going to be together forever, so it's really a non-issue. Just sign the papers and set the date. Do it for me. He turned to Gwen. Only she could see his eyes. He thinks I'll cheat, she thought. I hope he lives to see how wrong he was. She gave her dad her best smile. I think all of this is silly. I didn't even want a prenup. Where do I sign? Despite her lawyer's strong advice, she signed and filed the agreement. The wedding was the big event of the season. They had it in the largest cathedral in town, as they were nominally Catholic. It was packed, mostly with business and political contacts. From Hardy's side, only his grandfather and an aunt showed up. His parents were gone, and he never mentioned any siblings. The ceremony, dress, and reception were beautiful and outrageously expensive. Hardy mentioned the cost to Greg, her dad, who just laughed and said it'd be worth it as long as he didn't have to go through it again. The only downside was her mom. She called her mom in France, who was living with her 6th husband. I'm so happy for you, darling. Is he from a good family? He's from Alabama, Mom. Great. Old steel money? No, Mom, She cut in. Let me guess. Cotton, shrimp, timber? No, Mom, he doesn't have any money. Her enthusiasm dropped. Oh, no, he's not after your money, is he? No, Mom, he even wanted a prenup to make sure he wouldn't touch my money. I knew you were smart. You must have him well trained. Not exactly, but he did stop peeing on the rugs. What? Just kidding, Mom. Are you and Henry coming? I'd love to, honey, but Henry has me on a short leash, and you know he hates your father. Why would he hate Dad? He was 5 husbands ago. I don't know. Maybe because of his success, or because when I was tipsy, I said he was the best lover I ever had. I'd love to come, honey, but I can't afford it right now. She knew what her mom was hinting at. Don't worry, Mom. I'll arrange a first-class ticket and reservations at that 5-star hotel you like. You can use all the amenities. Just charge it to the room. We'll go dress shopping when you get here. Thank you, my darling. I'll see you soon. Gwen loved her mom, but she wasn't a good parent. When her parents divorced, her mom got custody and took her to Europe, promising Gwen's dad first-class tutors. They spent 10 months touring, and Gwen didn't open a single textbook. Eventually, her mom spent all the settlement money and tried using Gwen to get more. Her dad played hardball and won custody. Gwen then got tutored and entered college at 16. She was the youngest lawyer to join her dad's firm. Her mom went through husbands and money like they were endless until she met Henry. He loved her but wasn't a fool. She got a monthly allowance, and when it was gone, she got no more until the next month. Gwen used to slip her mom extra money until her dad found out and got mad. threatening to fire her and cut off the trust fund. After that, Gwen had to get permission to pay for her mom's trip. She loved her mom, but as she got older, she could only handle her in small doses. They had a few shopping adventures while she was there. It sometimes felt like Gwen was the parent, having to tell her mom no like a child. Her mom didn't like Hardy at all. "Stay away from him, honey. He's too much man for you." "Mom, why would you say that? He won't let you control him, and you're too much like me to not want to. He won't bend easily. Trust me, honey, he'll break your heart or you'll break his." Gwen laughed off her mom's fears. Secretly, she was relieved when her mom went back to France. The honeymoon was a month-long cruise, paid for by her dad. The only bump was when Gwen wanted to visit a beach where people didn't wear clothes. Hardy refused. She called him old-fashioned but didn't push it further. He tried to explain it to her. "I'm a bit old-fashioned. You knew that when we got married. Your past is your business, but now you belong to me. I want to be the only one to see you like that. Please understand." She didn't fully agree, but promised to go along with it. They moved into her townhouse. It was paid for, and she loved it. He liked it too, but reminded her that when they had kids, he expected a house with a nice yard. For a year, everything was great. They loved spending time together as husband and wife in every room of the house, stopping only when she had to travel for work. She worked as a contract lawyer specializing in international business, which kept her on the road a lot. At first, she tried to travel less, but soon she was going out of town at least twice a month for several days. He went with her when he could, but had his own job to worry about. When she was home, many of her business meetings were during dinner. Meanwhile, he had to be in court early every day. Their home life started to suffer. Little things began to feel more important. He was pushing her to cut back on work and think about having children. He was 36 and felt time was running out. "But I love my job," she exclaimed when he brought it up again. He tried to be reasonable, making his case too. After all, he was a trial lawyer. "Honey, I'm not asking you to quit. You're great at what you do. I know your dad and the partners are pleased. I'm just asking you to think about other options. Your dad wants you to get trial experience. He's grooming you to take over one day. Why not try that? We could work together and spend more time together." Spend time in stuffy courtrooms with criminals, or have meetings in places like London, Lisbon, Marrakesh. She loved her jet-set lifestyle and would never admit it to Hardy. "I know, honey, and I will in a year or two. I want to be the best at this first. It's important to me." This worried Hardy. It wasn't what she promised when they got married. He didn't push it, thinking it was a mistake. She thought it meant he agreed. She could change when she was ready. Another 6 months passed, and she grew more distant. He was a runner and had finished 2 marathons in Boston and 1 in New York. His goal was to finish, not win. She hated that he ran, saying it took time away from them. He kept quiet. He ran early in the mornings, and she was not an early riser. Often he'd run 5 miles, shower, and be ready for work before she even woke up. She was the one who often missed dinners at home because of work. Gwen became resentful of his friends. He didn't seek out powerful connections. Instead, he spent time with local police, working with at-risk youth at their gym. He knew every cop in a 10-block radius, including the chief and commissioner. He often chatted with the beat cops during his runs. For a defense lawyer, this was rare. But he was always fair, upfront, and never attacked a cop personally. All he wanted was the truth. They liked him before, but his reputation was cemented when he stepped in to help a patrolman subdue a suspect and saw another approaching with a bat. Using his military training, he stopped the second guy swiftly. The suspect wanted to sue him, but as a lawyer and officer of the court, the public defender warned it would go badly for him. But what really bothered her was his church friends. One Sunday morning, Gwen was in London, so he went for a run, taking a new route. He found it amazing that just 25 blocks separated upscale townhomes from poor areas. Deciding not to tempt fate, he turned back. There was a church on the corner, and he stopped to listen to the choir singing through the open doors. An old man was sitting on the steps, smoking. "Come on in, son. We always got room for one more." He declined. "Thank you, sir, but as you can see, I'm not dressed for church." He was drenched in sweat, and his shorts were soaked. "Don't matter to him," he said, pointing up. "But come another time, we'll always be here, and you'll always be welcome." The man stood and dusted off his seat. Well, I got a sermon to preach. Hope he forgives me for sneaking a smoke. Everybody thinks I'm preparing for the sermon, putting folks on the road to glory and all that. Have a blessed day. Hardy looked at the church sign out front. William Street, AME Zion Church. There were a lot of those in Alabama. AME stood for African Methodist Episcopal, a branch that aimed to include black people in the congregation. Hardy had gone to church while in the service and kind of missed it. He once asked Gwen if she ever went to Mass, and she just laughed. The next Sunday found him standing outside the church, in a suit. The same older man welcomed him warmly and took him inside. There was a moment of silence as the congregation took in the sight of a new face. Then they came up one by one, shaking his hand and welcoming him. The service was moving, reminding him of preachers back home. He visited his grandfather every couple of months. Gwen never joined him. He noticed the choir sang a cappella, even though a big B3 Hammond organ sat prominently off to the right. He asked the reverend about it as they shook hands after the service. It's broken, and we don't have the money to fix it. Even if we did, we have no one to play it. He changed the subject. I can tell by your voice you're not from around here. Where are you from originally? I doubt you've heard of it. Limestone County, Alabama, up on the Tennessee border. The reverend grinned broadly. Heck, boy, I'm from Franklin County. I thought your voice sounded familiar, he said, pausing with a frown. I used to work in Colbert County. There were some Wilkes living there. Are you related? Yes, preacher, Hardy replied, nodding. I've heard about their reputation. When I was younger, I was just as wild as they were. The preacher gave him an understanding look. Well, son, it seems like you've improved a lot. God works in mysterious ways. Hardy chuckled. Maybe it wasn't just God. A county sheriff, a smart judge, a tough drill instructor, a Jewish rabbi, and a good psychologist helped guide me. The preacher laughed. Brother, that sounds like a story worth hearing. Now, would you join my wife and me for lunch? Lunch was a feast of Southern cooking. There were at least 20 people there, and everyone was friendly and welcoming. Gwen attended with Hardy once. 2 months later, Hardy joined the church. A week after that, he fixed the organ and surprised everyone by playing with the choir. He had learned to play while recovering from wounds he got during his service. Learning an instrument was part of his healing process. Gwen found it amusing until she returned from a trip and found a young black teenager in their kitchen. She thought it was a break-in until Hardy came out of the home office explaining he was tutoring the boy. They called off the 911 call and spoke to the responding officers. Gwen was flustered, but later confronted Hardy. I admire your work, Hardy, but do you have to bring them into our home? Hardy looked tired. Don't you mean our home? Robbie is really smart and wants to succeed, but hasn't had many chances. I'm helping him prepare for his SATs. If he does well, he could get a scholarship. Realizing her mistake, she softened. Yes, honey, it is our home. I'm proud of what you're doing. It just surprised me. I'm exhausted. Can we go to bed? They did, but it felt forced and without real feeling. Their love life had declined. When they first married, Hardy used to come home, surprise her, and they would laugh and play. 6 months ago, she reacted coldly, and it was the last time he tried. Gwen was working on a massive merger between 2 companies in Boston and Paris. It was very complicated. Her team and their counterparts in Paris were working long hours to meet a deadline. She had only been home 2 days in 3 weeks. They had dinner with her dad, and he noticed the strain. When he asked about their plans for children, things got tense. Hardy's response was flat. You'll have to ask Gwen. We'd need to be on the same continent and in the same room for that. Gwen felt embarrassed. She knew she had been neglecting him, but the merger was important. Instead of diffusing the situation, she defended herself. That's not fair, and you know it. I need to work hard to finish this on time. Lots of people are depending on us. It'll be over soon. Then we can go back to normal. Hardy's words surprised her. Oh, I understand, honey. The needs of the many over the few, right? The firm should always come first, and I'm sure we'll get our lives back, at least until the next big deal. We'll have, 2, maybe 3 days? I guess I should be grateful for what I can get. Gwen felt a cold shock. How could he belittle her work? Before she could respond, her dad intervened. Gwen, not a word. Anything you say now will probably be hurtful. You two have issues. Go home and work them out. And Hardy, I resent the implication that our firm would come before your marriage." The ride home was silent. They sat on the couch together but felt miles apart. Hardy broke the silence. "I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to say anything in front of your dad, it just came out. But honey, we need to talk. This isn't what we agreed on when we married. We've lost the passion, and lately you've acted like you were ashamed of me around your friends. Are you out of love with me? Tell me and we'll move on. You're too beautiful to be unhappy." Gwen felt a wave of realization. Had she really been that bad? Looking back, she had to admit she had slighted him at times. Was she ashamed of him? No. He just needed to lighten up a bit. She started crying and apologized over and over. "I still love you. Of course, I'm proud of you. We will start our family soon. Just let me finish this merger, honey. We'll take a trip, rekindle our love. Please, honey." He held her, whispering that he loved her while she cried. He was glad she couldn't see his own tears. He desperately wanted to believe her, but he couldn't ignore the facts. They went to bed, content to hold each other. In the morning, he woke up to find her holding him gently. It had been a long time since they'd been this close. He lay back, enjoying the moment. When she started being more assertive, he gently lifted her up. She glided her lips slowly down his body, then back up again. She gazed at him with a familiar look in her eyes. "Oh no, big guy. Today we're going on a trip around the world," she said, pausing to kiss him softly. "First stop is France." She laughed. "Then maybe some traditional stuff, and finally we'll end in Greece. It's your turn to explore." Their time together that day was the most intense it had ever been. They spent the rest of the day cuddling and being close. On Friday, she went to work with a bright smile. Things were getting better, but her good mood vanished when Lisa said the boss wanted to see her immediately. Darn, she thought. What does Dad want now? This can't be good. She walked into his office. He came around his desk to sit next to her. "Honey, I'm very proud of you. This merger will make you a star. You'll surely become a full partner because of it." She smiled, feeling good about his praise. Maybe she was wrong. He leaned back, looking serious. "How's everything at home? Tell me the truth." "It's been a bit tough, but we reconnected last night. I'm officially asking for 2 weeks off right after the merger. We're going on a trip with no phones or work, just us. I'm happy for both of you. You know how much I like Hardy." He paused. She knew she wouldn't like what was coming next. "Honey, the other partners and I have decided you've done everything you can in your current department. It's time for you to move to the court cases area. A year or two of this experience will make you more complete. You'll need it for making tough decisions in the future. So, finish your project, take some time off with Hardy, and when you come back, you'll have new challenges." It felt like a slap in the face, all her hard work, and now she was being moved to a difficult department. Court cases for rich clients were often messy and stressful. Sometimes it got so bad that clients ended up in criminal court. The amount of paperwork was enough to make anyone want to quit. Her dad knew she was upset, but deep down he wanted her to have a family, and he knew they needed more time together. She tried to stay calm, even though he was her dad. He was also her boss. Afterwards, she slammed her office door, telling her assistant not to bother her for an hour. She irrationally blamed Hardy for everything. "He convinced my dad. They probably planned my whole future, even decided on the names of our future kids," she thought. That night at home, when Hardy tried to kiss her, she turned her head so he kissed her cheek instead. He was confused. Things seemed to be getting better. What had he done wrong now? "What's wrong, hun? Bad day at work?" She had been upset all day and finally exploded. "As if you don't know. You and Dad scheming to keep me at home, taking my job away. Why did you do this to me?" She yelled at him for 10 minutes before he could say a word. Hardy had no idea what she was talking about. Her dad had made that decision without telling him. It took a while for him to get the full story. While he understood her feelings, he started to get frustrated. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you hated the idea of spending more time at home so much. I had no say in the decision, but honestly, I like it. We made promises, Gwen, and set plans. We talked about this so much. I'm starting to think you were just pretending. Maybe you're just a spoiled rich girl saying I want. And I was dumb enough to believe you. But you know, deep down, I knew it would come to this. We're just too different. Even knowing that, I still hoped it could work, hoped with all my heart. So, even though I'm not surprised, I'm still hurt. By the end, he was standing over her, eyes full of pain and anger. She shrank back, scared of him for the first time in her life. When he turned and walked out the door, she just sat there in shock. She couldn't say how long she stayed there, confused and surprised. Eventually, she grabbed her phone and called him. She heard it ringing nearby and realized it was coming from the bedroom. Did he come back in while I was zoned out? She wondered as she rushed to the bedroom. Of course, he wasn't there. His phone was on the nightstand, like always when he was getting ready for bed. She called his friends, but nobody had seen or heard from him. In desperation, she called her dad. When he heard the story, she could hear his irritation. Finally, he snapped. "You need to fix this, and fast! He's a proud man, and you've been hurting him deeply lately. Get your head out of the clouds before you lose him. If you want out, end it quickly. Don't make him suffer. Damn it, girl, I knew this would happen. You're too much like your mother. I shouldn't have given him permission to marry you." Gwen was shocked by her dad's harsh words. Did he really think so little of her? She ended the call by asking him to tell her husband to come home or at least call if he heard from him. "And Daddy, make sure you tell him I said please, that I'm sorry, and most of all that I love him." She finally fell asleep, exhausted, around 2 in the morning. At noon, she called the local police to report him missing. Maybe they could help find him. She spoke to Officer Malone. "Hardy is missing. How long has it been?" She was surprised he used her husband's first name, but Hardy seemed to know everyone in the police force. "Since 7 last night. Can you help me?" "Officially, we can't do anything for 24 hours. Tell me, did you two have a small fight last night?" "Well, we did have a misunderstanding, but There you go, miss. He's probably off to cool down. If he's not home by tomorrow morning, call and ask for me. We met once, though you might not remember. I'm sure he won't stay away from someone as lovely as you for long. And unofficially, of course, I'll ask around today. If I find him, I'll give him a nudge. Stop worrying, he'll most likely be home soon." She thanked him a lot. His deep voice with a Boston Irish accent was comforting. Officer Malone spread the word, and soon found Hardy in an uptown hotel. Hardy was surprised when he opened the door. "Tommy, what brings you here? Is everything all right?" "No, my stubborn friend. Things are definitely not all right. Your wife reported you missing. She sounded like she was about to collapse any second." "It's not my business, but I've become fond of you. If you hadn't been there that day, my youngest might not be here now. So as a friend, do us all a favor and go home. If her dad gets involved, it could get uncomfortable for everyone." Hardy frowned. He had been thinking about going home, but his stubborn side was hard to hold back. "So, the rich lady now uses Boston's finest to do her dirty work? Tell me, Tommy, how did she pay you? Offer to donate to one of your causes?" Tommy was shocked by the attack. Hardy stood right in front of him, towering over Tommy's 5'9" height with his 6'3" frame. And those eyes. Tommy had never seen eyes like that before. Training kicked in, and he stepped back, touching his weapon. "Calm down, Hardy. She only tried to file a missing person report. I came on my own because I thought you were my friend and wanted to help. Sorry, it's not my business. I'll leave you alone." He was backing out of the room as he spoke, never taking his eyes off Hardy's. Hardy seemed to deflate like a balloon. "I'm sorry, Tommy. I didn't mean to be so rude. And I appreciate the effort, really, but there's a lot more to this than you know. Do me a favor, tell my wife I agree to talk. I should be calm enough by tomorrow. I'll be home by 1. We'll talk then. And Tommy, thank you. It's good to know I have friends. Don't mention it. I expect to see you Thursday for basketball tryouts at the gym. I think we're going to give you the girls this year." Hardy smiled for the first time that day. "Great. I can't handle one Yankee woman, and you want to let a bunch of 12- and 13-year-old girls loose on me? Thanks a lot." Tommy grinned back. "Don't worry, by the second day, they'll all be in love with you. Then they'd do anything for you. Good luck, my friend." As he walked away, he fingered the rosary in his pocket and said a little prayer for Hardy. It couldn't hurt. Gwen had not been idle. After the shock wore off, she started making calls. She called Crystal Ann. She just laughed and hung up. It had only been 10 days since their last talk. Gwen hoped she didn't reveal her mistake with Allan. It had been a tense week, working with Allan again. She repeated their previous conversation. She really liked him, but it had been a mistake, never to be repeated. He kept hinting, so she started avoiding him, speaking only when work required it. Thank goodness they only needed one more week to finish the deal for their clients. He was nice to her, didn't want to scare her again, but deep down he was angry. Still, patience was key in closing deals, and he was a master. Word got back to him soon about her situation. He called her that night before Officer Malone got back to her. He was careful in his wording, trying to show compassion while undermining Hardy more. I'm sure he'll be back soon. He just doesn't understand our world. As soon as he calms down and thinks about everything, he'll come back. He had been doing this for months, talking down Hardy, stressing his humble background, his lack of sophistication, and his devotion to his low-income clients. He planted small doubts in her mind about whether Hardy loved her or the lifestyle. He even talked her into going to a nude beach in France, allowing her to let go of her modesty. Then he sympathized with her for marrying someone conservative. Her insecurities showed. Never in a million years did she think Hardy would walk out on her. The phone call from Malone gave her hope and comfort. She actually listened to his advice. I don't know what happened and don't want to know, but he's hurt bad. I could see it plain as day. Whether it's your fault or his, it doesn't matter. What matters is you need to talk it out. Be honest, be loving, and be upfront when he asks you something. You and Hardy are lawyers. Forget the legal talk and just communicate with each other. If things turn out as I expect, Thomas Francis is a good name for a boy. She laughed for the first time in days and agreed to talk it over with Hardy. Feeling grateful, she ended the call. She picked out her nicest nightgown, wanting to look lovely yet modest. She spritzed on his favorite perfume and put on a silk robe, hoping to look beautiful, but also ready to talk. She prayed that she wouldn't mess this up. Satisfied, she had a light dinner, called her dad to say everything should be fine by the next night, drank a bit of scotch to relax, and went to sleep. Allan sat thinking. Her assistant had just shared a text Gwen sent. 1 o'clock. I need to be there by 11. If I do this right, he'll be gone by 1:15 and I'll be there to comfort her. A little comforting and she'll lean on me. At 10:30, he arrived at her door. She opened it right away, expecting someone else, no doubt. She looked amazing in her gown, with her hair perfectly done. She was really trying. Allan, what are you doing here? I thought I'd check in, see if Hardy's still away. I wanted to comfort you, cheer you up. Thanks, but he'll be here soon. I think we're going to be fine. That's great, he said, pretending to be happy. I brought some champagne to comfort you. Let's use it to celebrate instead. I don't know, Allan. Hardy might not understand if he arrives and sees you. He doesn't know about Paris, does he? No, I told you it was a mistake. Please don't bring it up again. I promise I won't say a word. How about a quick drink and then I'll leave? It would be a shame to waste this bottle. Gwen loved champagne, one of her weaknesses. This was a rare and special bottle Allan had worked hard to get. Well, maybe one glass. Then you have to go. You're a good friend, Allan, thanks. He hugged her as the door closed. By 11, she was feeling the effects of the drugs he put in the champagne. She was leaning against him, barely able to speak. Come on, let's go to the bedroom. Hardy didn't sleep much. He missed Gwen. Knowing she was looking for him made him feel hopeful. Maybe things would work out. He stopped by the church on his way home, hoping the pastor could give him some advice. They talked for an hour. The pastor had taken counseling courses as part of his job. He understood the importance of helping couples stay together. He had doubts about Hardy and Gwen continuing as a couple. He was trying, but he wondered about her. He didn't really understand wealthy people. Hardy, one thing to consider in counseling is this. Am I better off with her or without her? I've prayed for you both. I can't decide for you. Does she make you happy? Do you make her happy? Can you both promise to rekindle your relationship? Tears shone in Hardy's eyes. I can't imagine life without her. I don't want to. Then go home to your wife. Show each other love. I'll excuse you from services today. I'm sure God will understand. He shook the pastor's hand. Thank you, Pastor. I'm supposed to be there in an hour, but I'm going now. He walked quickly out of the church. He reached home by 11:20. Not seeing her, he thought she might be out or still sleeping. He walked quietly to the bedroom to let her rest, planning to join her if she was asleep. He started to open the door when he heard noises that shouldn't be there. Something was wrong. No one should be with her. Not a timid man, he threw the door open, making a bang and denting the wall with the doorknob. What he saw destroyed his trust and dreams in an instant. All his efforts and the support of friends vanished like cheap paint in rain. He reverted to his rough, angry younger self immediately. Allan was lost in his own world, ignoring Gwen's weak protests. He thought he had her, and Hardy would leave. Then she would be his. He grinned when the door flew open, thinking it would be even better. When he finished, he'd beat Hardy for good measure. He looked over his shoulder. "Come on in here and watch." Those were his last clear words for weeks. Even through the drug haze, Gwen thought the scream sounded like an animal's roar. Allan might have been skilled in martial arts, but when you're not expecting a fight, your options are limited. Hardy grabbed Allan by the hair and pulled him off the bed. Allan had to wear a neck brace for 2 months. Hardy, still holding his hair, started punching him. Allan ended up with a broken nose, jaw broken in 2 places, several missing teeth, broken ribs, and a broken arm. Both eyes were black and his ear was cut. He never once hit him in the groin. Gwen, realizing what was happening, screamed and tried to make Hardy stop. Hardy didn't hear her. When she pulled on his arm, he thought someone was attacking him. He turned around and hit her in anger. He hit her so hard it split her lip, needing 6 stitches. She also had to get a dental implant later because she swallowed a tooth. Gwen passed out before she even hit the headboard. Hardy had a moment of clarity when he saw her hit the headboard and stopped. The only sounds in the room were his heavy breathing and the groans of his victims. Still angry and confused, he went to check if she was breathing. He saw the superglue he had bought to fix a vase she broke. The vase, the only thing left from his mother, was important to him. Gwen had come home a bit drunk one night and knocked it off the nightstand, breaking it. He had quietly picked up the pieces. He put the glue in his pocket, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her to the floor. With his other hand, he grabbed his hair too, and dragged them both through the house like they weighed nothing. Their place was on the ground floor with a small patio in front. The patio was just big enough for a table and 2 chairs and raised a bit above the sidewalk, protected by a short iron fence. Hardy liked sitting there in warm weather, talking to neighbors and reading the paper. Gwen hardly used it. With no free hands, fueled by anger, he kicked the front door open and dragged them onto the patio. They were both still unconscious, but would wake up with sore heads. He turned and walked down the street. People were outside, but no one tried to stop him. They just stared at the scene on the patio. As his mind cleared a bit, he took out his phone and dialed 911. He reported a domestic fight with injuries and gave his address without saying his name. 9 blocks later, he reached the local police station. The first person he saw was Tommy. "Hey, Hardy, how'd your talk go? Made peace yet?" Hardy didn't answer. Tommy, with nearly 30 years of police experience, noticed Hardy's troubled look, bloody hands and clothes, and slouched posture. He gently asked, "What happened, old friend?" "It's bad, Tommy, real bad. I caught her with the guy from her work. I lost control and hurt them both. I don't know how badly. I'm turning myself in." Tommy was shocked. He had never heard Hardy lose his temper before. Hardy was usually the calmest person he knew. Just then, Tommy's radio crackled with reports and a call for an ambulance. Tommy made a quick decision. He remembered how Hardy had once saved his son from a dangerous man with a bat. "Stop. Don't say another word. Get in the car." He opened the car door and Hardy got in without a word. Tommy hadn't arrested him yet, but wanted to keep him under control. Tommy called his captain, who called the chief, who called the commissioner. This was a serious situation for Hardy and could be bad for the police and Hardy's father-in-law. Tommy followed his orders and hung up. He started driving away. Hardy noticed and asked why. Tommy told him to stay quiet, guessing it was because Hardy hadn't been read his rights. When they arrived at his father-in-law's mansion, Hardy sat up. "What are we doing here?" "Not another word, old son. I'll be back in a minute." Leaving Hardy in the car, Tommy rang the bell. The housekeeper answered, and he asked to see the boss, saying it was urgent police business. Greg, Hardy's father-in-law, came to the door looking puzzled. "Mr. Cannaday, a private word, please," Tommy said, glancing at the housekeeper. "Come in. We'll go to my office." Once in the office, they got to the point. "What can I do for you, Officer Malone?" Greg asked. "Sir, I'm from the 21st Precinct. Your daughter and son-in-law live there." Greg looked worried. Has something happened to my family? Are you aware they've been having problems? Yes, my daughter told me. I thought they would work it out. Tommy sighed. I don't think so. He explained what had happened. Keeping in touch with his captain, he learned that Gwen had minor injuries and was in a private room. The man was worse off, with broken bones and a concussion, but his life wasn't in danger. He didn't go into detail about how he had left them. Greg went pale but then straightened up, focusing. Where's Hardy? I need to get there. I'm his lawyer. First, I need to see my daughter and make sure she's okay. Have you read him his rights? Has he been questioned? No, sir. He hasn't been charged yet, so we didn't need to. He's outside in the car now. The chief wants you to call before we proceed. I'm here until then. Greg told the housekeeper to get Tommy some coffee while he made calls. The chief agreed to place Hardy in Greg's custody unofficially until charges could be filed. Officer Malone was assigned to stay with him for a few days. Greg handed Tommy some keys and papers. Officer Malone, these are keys to my cottage on Cape Cod and directions on how to get there. These are the keys to my Lincoln. Someone will pick up your patrol car soon. Call the commissioner. He'll explain everything. Keep Hardy there until we call. If needed, handcuff him to the bed. Now, I need to go with you to see Hardy. Wait just out of hearing range, client-lawyer talk, you understand? They walked to the front of the house. Just before they stepped outside, he touched Malone's arm. I can't thank you enough, but why? Why help him like this? Mr. Cannaday, he's one of the good ones. He does his job, doesn't give us breaks, but never makes it personal. Many defense lawyers win cases by making cops look bad, but not Hardy. Also, he's a good man. He helps out with the Police Youth League with money, but more importantly, with his time. Most lawyers just write a check. Hardy is always there with us. If he ever has kids, he'll be a great dad. He knows how to get them to listen and behave because he respects them and expects the same in return. But I helped him for 2 more reasons. Last year, my youngest son was a new patrolman working in a rough area. He made a rookie mistake. He thought he had the crowd controlled and was cuffing a suspect. The suspect's partner was about to hit him with a bat when Hardy came by. He stopped the guy. My son would have been hit from behind. He could have been badly hurt, even killed. Another reason is you and I are related distantly. My grandmother was a Kennedy. Not from the famous Kennedy family, but still distant relatives. My aunt researched our family tree for fun. Did you know that when our ancestors came over from Ireland, the clerks at Ellis Island weren't very smart? Some of them could barely spell. Some of our people were recorded as Kennedy, some as Cannaday, but they were all the same family. Just like you're a 5th-generation lawyer, I'm a 5th-generation cop. Our families have been connected for over 100 years, and I was taught from a young age that family always looks out for family. Greg was overwhelmed. He thought his family was fading away over the years. He extended his hand and Malone shook it. Thank you, cousin. Know that as long as my firm stands, your family will never pay a lawyer's fee. Family has to stick together. Now excuse me while I talk to my silly son-in-law. He opened the car door. Out! Hardy got out of the car slowly, not looking him in the eye. Greg started right away. Malone told me what happened. It was terrible what was done to you, and I can understand your anger at the guy, even if I can't approve of what you did. But Gwen, was that necessary? You could have just walked away. Hardy told him the whole story, making sure he knew he only hit her once, by accident. He was sorry about her and felt deeply ashamed, knowing how much he hated people who hurt others. But he surprised Greg with what he said next. She probably saved Allan's life. I had every intention of beating him to death. If she hadn't interrupted me, I would have. And I'm sorry, but only that I didn't get a chance to finish the job. Greg realized as he looked at him that he didn't know who he was anymore. It was like someone flipped a switch, and he had turned into something different, maybe even bad. And his eyes, usually bright and full of good humor, were now cold and empty. I have to go to the hospital. You've been released into my care, and as your lawyer and boss, I'm ordering you to go with Officer Malone. Do not talk to anyone, you understand? Not a soul. Promise me, Hardy. He agreed, and Greg watched as the car drove away. Greg had both of them moved to a private hospital. Gwen looked terrible. Her lip and the side of her face were very swollen, with her lip full of stitches. Plus, she had a mild concussion. The doctors assured him that in a couple of weeks she would be back to normal. She was only half awake, But in a moment of clarity, she recognized her dad and held out her hands. He held her until she went back to sleep. His shirt was soaked with her tears, and she whispered, "Sorry," over and over. He was shocked when he saw Allan, trying to reconcile his image of Hardy with the man capable of doing this. The face was swollen beyond recognition, his jaw was wired, and he had tubes and bandages sticking out of his face. What shocked him most of all was that both Gwen and Allan had almost shaved heads. He thought it was due to the medical treatment. When he read the police report, he was so stunned he had to lie down. It was one of the most uncomfortable meetings he had ever had. A month had passed. Gwen looked better except for the small scars on her lip. Her hair had grown out, and she had it in a modest bob. The hairstyle and her quiet behavior made her look older. She had come back to her father's house after she was released from the hospital, on medical leave from the firm, hardly ever leaving her room. Greg finally insisted on counseling. She had gone twice, so it was too early to tell if it was helping. Allan still looked bad. His face was covered in healing bruises. His jaw was wired shut, and would be for a few more weeks, and his short haircut made him look very different. Trying to keep the disgust out of his voice, he spoke. "All right, you two. Here's what's going to happen. We'll start with you, Allan. Here are your options. 1. I'll let you resign, and you won't get a recommendation. If you do this, I'll pay for your reconstructive surgery and give you $200,000. You will move west of the Mississippi. I hear California has great plastic surgeons. You will sign a paper releasing Hardy from any further responsibility for your medical bills. I've already paid them anyway. You will refuse to press charges for the assault, go away, and never contact him, my daughter, or this firm again." Allan was already shaking his head no, dreaming of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Plus, he really wanted to make sure the rude man paid for what he did. Greg watched him for a moment. "Okay, option 2. I'll have you arrested for hurting my daughter and drug charges. Your fingerprints are on the champagne bottle. Do you know what happens to good-looking lawyers in jail? You'll be someone's new friend very soon, I promise. You'll lose your right to be a lawyer. Even if you beat the assault charge, the drug charges will get you. Gwen has agreed to tell them everything. You'll probably have a criminal record, and you'll end up working for minimum wage. Also, the Boston police really don't like you right now. You shouldn't have been so rude when you were defending people. If you're even a mile over the speed limit, they'll give you a ticket. If you make a noise in public, they'll find a reason to cite you. Have one drink in a bar, and they'll charge you with being drunk and disorderly. They know you use drugs. They'll search your home, car, and even your body again and again. All I need to do is tell the commissioner to start. Moving to California looks like your best option. In short, I'll use all my money and contacts to ruin your life, and I'll do it happily. You shouldn't have messed with my family." He picked up the phone. "So shake your head yes right now, or the trouble starts." Allan felt trapped and knew it. Tears streamed down his face as he nodded. Greg smiled for the first time. "Good. Now, before you go, my daughter wants to speak to you. When she's done, I expect to hear you're on a plane to the West Coast within 24 hours. If not, I start making calls." Gwen stood up and faced him. He wouldn't look at her. She grabbed him by his injured ear. He would have screamed if he could have opened his mouth. "Look at me. I lost someone I loved because of you. I'm telling you now, without the drugs, you're terrible at everything. I hope you have a long, miserable life and all the bad things you did come back to hurt you." She let go of his ear and slapped him hard. He almost fainted from the pain. He crawled out of the office. The papers and check were ready for him at the security desk. After he left, they sat in silence for a bit. Greg put his head in his hands. Gwen broke the silence. She had heard more than enough of that in the past few weeks. "Thank you, Daddy. Now can you please get Hardy to talk to me?" It broke his heart to tell her, but she needed to know. "Gwen, he's gone. He went back to Alabama 3 weeks ago. He's not coming back. I barely convinced him to stay with the firm." Tears instantly filled her eyes. She tried to speak, but couldn't because of her sobs. "I'm sorry, honey, but it gets worse. He filed for divorce before he left. I tried to talk him out of it and change the reason. He filed for adultery." Gwen fainted. Greg sent her home and called a doctor. He gave her something to calm her down and told him to keep an eye on her for the next few days. Another 3 weeks passed. They sat in the dining room. She hadn't said much except to ask for the best divorce lawyer. She wanted to fight the divorce. He refused. She got loud and abusive. He was at his wit's end. The Spoiled Princess Act was in full swing. Gwen, listen to me. I've been thinking a lot about this. I'm partly to blame for this mess. Me and your mom. Your mom gave you everything you wanted and taught you to be manipulative. I was a single dad, and you were my princess, so I spoiled you too, just not as much. Because of your upbringing and wealth, you have a huge sense of entitlement. It's time for a reality check. Are you listening to me? She nodded, not really paying attention, still wondering why her lawyer hadn't set a meeting yet. Gwen, look at me. You have no idea what your actions have cost me. I'll be paying back favors for years, not even mentioning the money spent. But I managed to keep Hardy out of jail and to retain his license. It was close. When Allan refused to press charges, a young assistant district attorney tried to push anyway to make a name for himself. Know what it's like to almost destroy someone? I was close to doing it, but wiser people stopped me. The commissioner, the state attorney general, and the lieutenant governor talked him out of it. I've decided it's time for some tough love. You need to grow up and learn how the world really works. I'm sorry, honey, but you no longer work for the firm. The scandal cost us too much. Clients don't like a firm that can't keep its own house in order, so you're fired. I don't have a choice. Her mouth hung open. What had he just said? It gets worse, Gwen. You've been putting most of your salary into stock options, keeping only a little in checking. You've always had your trust fund, and I've let you take money from it whenever you wanted something. From today, you can't take money from your trust fund. Your stock options are locked in. You can't cash them out. Your grandmother knew this might happen. There's a section in the trust agreement about moral behavior. If you show bad judgment before the trust fund is given out, the trustee can delay the release for years up to your 50th birthday. Grandma was afraid you would turn out like your mom. Don't even think about the townhouse. The trust owns it. So you're jobless, homeless, and mostly broke. Here's what's going to happen. You can say no, but you won't find another job on the East Coast. Yes, I've blackballed you. If you accept my offer and behave, you can come back to the firm in a year. By then, someone else will have messed up and people will forget about you. I'll even pay for a good therapist if you can find one where you're going. He handed her some papers. Congratulations. You are now the newest assistant district attorney, ADA, of Franklin County, Alabama. You start next week. Your yearly salary is $38,000. I'm a friend of the district attorney. He owed me a favor. I got you a nice apartment and covered the security deposits, but you'll need to pay the rent from your salary. You can't take your Lexus. It's leased by the firm. Instead, I got you a Ford Focus. I've paid the deposits, but you have to make the monthly payments. You're also responsible for your phone and utility bills. The only rule from my friend is a monthly drug test. It'll be private, only he will see the results. Fail once and you're fired. I won't help you. Do this. Stay clean, work hard, prove you're an adult who can take care of yourself, and you can come back. Fail, and you better hope there's a job for you in Iowa or North Dakota. Oh, and you're not flying there. You can't afford it. You're taking Amtrak. You can only bring 3 bags, so pack wisely. If you refuse, be out by tomorrow or I'll have you removed. He got up and left her in shock. Just before leaving the room, he turned back. One more thing. Hardy is there, running an office 2 counties away. You probably won't meet, but be polite if you do. Also, you'll be using your maiden name. Hardy put it in the divorce papers that you can't use his name, so get used to it. He walked out, leaving her crying. She stepped off the train, exhausted after 2 days. The heat and humidity hit her hard. Who would choose to live here? She thought, dragging her bags. No one offered to help. So much for Southern hospitality. Maybe Hardy spread rumors about me. Thinking of him hurt. Yes, what happened was her fault, but he should have stayed and fought for her. She hadn't seen him since that morning. She begged her father and Crystal Ann for help. Crystal Ann had just laughed before looking a bit sorry. He's gone. I told you this would happen if he caught you, but you did it anyway, and he knows about Paris. Allan told him as a final blow. Consider it a lesson learned. You know what makes me mad? I've known him for almost 20 years, and you were the first person I saw him love. I was so jealous of you, but he was happy, so I accepted it. Now that you've hurt him, he'll be more guarded, less trusting. He may never love again. I will do my best to help him, spoil him, and try to make him love me." Gwen felt a deep pain that turned into anger. "Good luck with that. He's in Alabama, you're here. It's going to be hard to comfort him. And he's still mine, I'll never let him go. I just need to see him, to beg him to listen. I can make things right." Crystal Ann looked at her with pity. "It's been 3 months, and he hasn't mentioned your name. The closest he came was calling you that Yankee woman. Let him go. This is my last week here. I'm moving to the Alabama office. He'll forget you, even if I have to make it my life's work. Goodbye, Gwen. If you find someone else, treat him better." Gwen wanted to hit her, but then heard her father's voice. He took her arm and led her away, wishing Crystal Ann good luck with her new job. Once in his office, she burst out, "Dad, you need to fire her! She's going down there to get close to my husband. How could you wish her well?" He didn't seem affected by her outburst. He pointed to a chair and told her to sit. "Gwen, I wished her well because she's a good woman and a great worker. What she does with your soon-to-be ex-husband is none of my business. Not to hurt your feelings, but I think she could make him very happy. Maybe even give him the kids he wanted with you. You threw him away. Don't be mad if someone else picks him up." She started crying again. It had been months, and she still cried. Maybe she truly loved him. For the first time, he felt a bit guilty for meddling in their marriage. But it was too late now. He cleared his head and focused. "You leave for Birmingham at the end of the week. Are you ready?" She nodded, still in disbelief that he was making her do this. "As ready as I'll ever be. Please, Dad, let me stay. Find me a job in another firm. I won't embarrass you." "Gwen, you can't embarrass me more than you already have." I tried to keep it quiet, but it was too good a story not to share. Trouble, lies, faith, all we needed was a rock band to make it complete. Nope, in this town your name's ruined for a while. Do your year, get some experience, maybe grow up a bit. Then you can come back home when the time is right. Gwen had stopped crying. "Daddy, I'll do it. I'll serve my time, I'll behave. But you know, I'll be in the same state as him and close by too. We'll cross paths soon. I'll get my chance to ask him to come home. I'll go even more willingly if you do one thing for me." He looked at her, expecting a big demand. "Ask me. But if I don't like it, I'll say no, and you'll still have to go." She actually got on her knees, a thing he had never seen her do. "I'm begging you, Daddy. Please help me get a lawyer to fight for my marriage. I'll pay for it myself. I have about $9,000 in my account. I'll cover the lawyer's fee. All I want is a chance to talk to him." "You've told everyone, and nobody will even talk to me after they know who I am. Please, Daddy, please." He had never seen her like this. Maybe she was starting to become a better person. He thought about it for a few minutes. She stayed on her knees, her face a mix of hope and sadness. "All right, I'll get Ivan. But baby, don't turn this into a mess. Act with some dignity. Your word, please." Darn, she was crying again. Between sobs, she promised everything he wanted to hear. Looking into her eyes, he believed she meant it. Ivan Asimov was one of the best divorce lawyers around. What made him different was that he preferred mediation and counseling. He was the lawyer you went to when you didn't really want a divorce. She had talked with him twice before leaving. He made her tell him everything, and when she finished, he honestly told her it didn't look good, but he would do his very best. Whispering a small prayer for his success, she returned to the task at hand, lugging her bags. She was so focused she didn't see the man approach her. "Miss Cannaday, I presume?" She looked up. He was tall, slightly hunched, wearing a wrinkled suit. Balding with a slight belly, he looked like a middle manager. He held out his hand. "I'm Paul DuPont, District Attorney for Jefferson County, your new boss. I promised your dad I would meet you and help you settle in. Here, give me those bags." Before she could say a word, he grabbed her 2 biggest bags and started walking. He's stronger than he looks, she thought as she followed. Her bags were heavy. When you need to pack your life into 3 bags, you don't waste space. Putting the bags in the trunk of his big Ford, he opened the door for her. Settling into the seat, he turned the air conditioner up high. "Sorry about the heat. You're visiting during the hottest summer in 60 years. You'll get used to it." Not likely, she thought, looking out the window at the dry grass and leaves. She didn't say much, but it didn't matter because he seemed to love talking. "As I live and breathe, I never thought I would have Greg Canaday's daughter working for me. Just goes to show, you never know. How is he? Still as much of a joker as he was in college? Why, I remember the time he took a bra from our ethics professor to make a slingshot for history class. That woman had the biggest chest I ever saw. She was not happy. He tried to defend his actions by saying he was ethically bound to get the best materials available. She didn't buy it, and he spent the rest of her class kissing up to her. She got revenge by making him escort her to a mixer. He was scared she'd want more, if you know what I mean. Jokes? Stealing bras? This was a side of her dad she had never seen. He glanced over and saw her expression. Well, we were quite young. Everybody grows up. They rode in silence for a while. Then he pulled into the Ford dealership, and she looked at him. We're here to get your car. Then I'll take you to your apartment and you can get the keys. Afterwards, I'll take you by the office, show you around, and introduce you to some of your coworkers. He held her gaze for a moment, and she saw some power in him. Before we get out, I want to clear up a few things. Your dad told me mostly how you ended up here. I'll get your drug test results. One hint of anything stronger than a beer and you're gone. No discussion. Do your job the best you can. Stay in line, and this year will be over soon. Most of my staff are married. If I even think you've done anything unprofessional, you'll be on a train the same day. What you do in your own time is up to you, but do not mess around at work. Do you understand? At first, she felt angry. How dare he lecture her? She quickly calmed down. This mess was her own doing, and she understood his point. Mr. DuPont, I promise to do my best job for you. And as for messing around, it's my deepest wish to get my husband back, so there will be no messing around with anyone, anywhere. He looked her over and nodded. I'll hold you to that. Believe it or not, I know your husband. Not to break your spirits, but I'd bet good money you'll never see him again. That guy can hold a grudge, I've seen it. Honestly, I'm surprised you're not hurt. He must have seen the shock on her face. What do you mean? My husband is the sweetest man I ever met, and it's Hardy, not hard-ass. He looked at her sadly. Girl, some advice. Don't tell anyone who your husband is. There are still some folks around here who think poorly of him. He's been known as hard-ass since he was 17. He's the meanest man I ever met, and that includes all the killers and crazy people I sent to Huntsville. He never stops. I chased him for years. He did all sorts of bad things. He went to juvie twice. When he got older, he got off twice because of good lawyers and bad police work. I finally had him for good, but the local sheriff and the judge, who was his father-in-law, made a deal. He would join the military in exchange for a clean record. I always wondered what dirt he had on them, but now he's back, and I'm patient. Sooner or later, he'll mess up, and I'll catch him. So keep quiet about him. Lots of people still hate him, and many are scared of him. They wouldn't think twice about using you to get to him. The car was silent for a few minutes. I'm having trouble matching the man I know with what you said. He loves people, especially kids. I've never even heard him be rude. Check the records when you get a chance, but be careful. He led a gang of small-time criminals called the Redneck Mafia. People were more scared of him than of us. Back then, if he set the back of your house on fire and stood out front daring you to come out, most people would rather face the fire. I hope you're right, that he has changed, but if you don't mind, I'll wait until I have more facts. Now, let's get your car. After a few minutes of paperwork, sign here, and here, she had her car. A shiny red Ford Focus, it was nice, but much smaller than her Lexus at home. The apartment was 2 bedrooms, small but new. It seemed to be in a nice neighborhood. The offices were small and cluttered. Space was limited. She got introduced around and was left with Karen Thomas, the senior assistant district attorney. Here it is, honey. What you see is what you get. You'll have hardly any privacy, not much time per case, and you better think fast. We all share staff, no one has a private assistant or paralegal, so you have to do a lot of the basic work yourself. Most cases are simple. Bad guys who got caught. Most of them plead out and it never goes to trial. Paul and I handle the hard ones. The bad economy means more crime and less resources. Don't worry, we'll give you easy cases until you get some experience. After that, it's sink or swim. Here's my card. If you need anything or just want to talk, call me after 6. I'll be glad to help. She paused to see if she was taking it in. Satisfied and seeing they were alone in her small office, she spoke again. Paul and I are the only ones who know who you were married to. I know he warned you, and you know he holds a grudge. I didn't know his past, but I faced him in court, and if he's as tough outside court as he is inside, he could be very dangerous. Leopards don't change their spots, honey, but maybe in your case, he put on a little paint. Your actions might have washed off the paint, showing his true colors. Be careful if you're around him, it could end badly. Gwen looked at her serious face and realized she really had no idea who she had married. Not at all. Hardy sat back in his office chair, looking out the window. The bank's thermometer said 103 degrees, another scorcher. His time in Boston had softened him, and he struggled with the heat. Time would toughen him up. It always did. Still, he ran very early in the mornings. Glancing at the email on his screen, his frown deepened. He had been out of the military for years. Why the summons? It was full of military jargon. But the point was he had to see Major Stein, his old doctor, for a follow-up visit. Strictly routine, it said. It made clear it was mandatory, and if he refused, CID would come to get him, with or without his consent. He sent a confirmation. He would be at Fort Stewart, Georgia, the following week. Realistically, he knew it might be good to talk to the Major. The man probably knew more about him than anyone alive. He hadn't been doing well since the breakup, finding he had to constantly check himself to keep from getting angry at the slightest thing. It wasn't fair to his clients. Most were fighting for their lives and needed him at 100%. That night, as he got out of the shower, he looked at the scars on his chest, arms, legs, and back. Most were from his time in Iraq, but a few, including one bullet wound, were from before he left Alabama. There was only one scar he was proud of, a small cut hidden by a tattoo of a snake. A copperhead, as dangerous as a rattlesnake without the warning rattle. No one outside his old friends knew the meaning. He told Gwen it was a drunken decision. When she said he should have it removed, he said keeping it would always remind him to think before acting. Major Stein sat in his office, reviewing his notes on Hardy Wilkes. He needn't have bothered. He remembered everything. The man had always intrigued him, smart, big, with a good sense of humor and quick wit that made him friends easily. But when he looked deeper, he saw a very dangerous, very unpredictable man. His early records showed he liked military life, liking the discipline and order. The first sign of trouble came in his 7th week of boot camp. He got the full story from his drill instructor. All Hardy would say was someone insulted his mother, something you don't do to a Southerner. The D.I. Damn, Major, I didn't see it coming. Not at all. He just seemed like a plain guy from the South. In every new group of recruits, there's always one who thinks he's smarter, better, and stronger. He's the one you have to break to get the others to follow the rules. At first, I ignored him and focused on the slackers and loudmouths. But then I noticed him. He never talked back, never disobeyed. But he had this look in his eye like, I'm doing this because I choose to, not because you can make me. I decided he needed to be taught a lesson. I gave him all the dirty jobs. I made him work extra. He did everything with a half smile like he thought it was funny. It was driving me crazy. I did something I hadn't done in years. I set up a scene where I was yelling at him in front of the other recruits. I asked if he was scared of me. He had that little half smile again. No, Sir Top, I'm not. I respect you, but I don't fear you. I was losing control. I told him and the rest to meet for special duty 1 hour after dinner behind the barracks with no shirt on. When he showed up, I was waiting with 2 more drill instructors. We were also without shirts. All right, I said, no rank here. If any man thinks he can beat me, step up. No one did, so I started taunting a few others before I got to Wilkes. Get up here, you dumb redneck. Let's see what someone unafraid can do. He just laughed. He laughed. Then he said since there was no rank here, he could call me a fool and walk away. Just like that, I had lost control completely. He was walking off when I yelled at him. Walking away, scaredy cat. Bet your mom would be real proud of the coward she raised. I finally got a reaction. He turned around, eyes blazing. My mom didn't raise me. She died when I was young. Didn't anyone teach you to respect the dead? I had him. I found his weak spot. I started calling his mother terrible names. I told him I would talk bad about his dad, but since his mom was a lying woman, he probably didn't know who his dad was. He got really worked up, and I got ready for him to rush at me, but he suddenly smiled and walked up close, stopping just an inch from my face. He looked me right in the eye. I'll never forget what he said. You got anyone you want to send a last message to, do it now, in 30 seconds. I'm going to start beating you, and I won't stop until you're dead. Now, Doc, I've been in combat, and before I was a drill instructor, I taught hand-to-hand combat. I'm pretty good at fighting. But if it hadn't been for the other drill instructors and the recruits, I'd be dead right now. I got in a few hits, but he had skills I never dreamed of, and he wouldn't stop even when I did. It took 7 people to pull him off me. I lost 2 teeth, had 7 broken ribs, a cracked thigh bone, and 2 broken toes. Doc, he even bit me, took 4 stitches to close the wound. He broke the nose of one drill instructor and hit the other before the recruits held him down by laying on top of him. The other drill instructor got us to the medical center. The recruits said they had to lay on him for 45 minutes before he calmed down. Of course, word got out. He would have been kicked out of the Corps and I would have been retired. But he told the commanding officer it was an advanced hand-to-hand training exercise that got out of hand. He knew it was a lie, but it made the problem go away, so he accepted it. He also sent Hardy to the toughest training school. After that, I don't know what happened to him. The major knew. Top of his class in recon training, 1 tour in Iraq, earned 2 Purple Hearts and 3 reprimands. Came stateside to train others and then went back to the field. He was halfway through his 2nd tour at the time of the incident. He recalled the reports, including the interview with the lieutenant in charge. We were pinned down in a small valley. Never saw it coming. The enemy was on top of a hill. They had full view, and we only had a small window. 2 of us were dead and 3 were hurt. Every time we moved, they shot at us. The hurt needed a doctor, and our radios were down. Couldn't get a signal. They said later it was an issue with the atmosphere. I was scared when a voice I never heard before spoke right next to me. Damn, LT, what kind of mess have y'all got yourselves into? I freaked. This guy just snuck up on us. We never even saw him coming. Tall, thin, gray eyes, and a stupid grin on his face. How did you get here? Same way you did, just quieter. They're trying to surround you, but the first 2 guys they sent out are already dead. Hold tight, this might take a while. And just like that, he was gone, leaving his pack and rifle. I watched him for a while, and it seemed like he just disappeared. About an hour later, I thought he had left when shooting started in the cave, followed by screaming and growling. It was quiet after about 10 minutes, except for someone screaming. Our interpreter said it was a kid, yelling he was giving up, begging for his life, asking God to save him from the demon. I took a chance, and we rushed the cave. There were 7 men in it, and 5 of them were dead. 1 kid survived. We found out later he was 15. He was hiding in the smallest crack at the back of the cave, begging for his life. The other survivor was Hardy. He had been shot 3 times. 1 bullet went through his right arm, breaking it. He had broken his left leg when he fell into the cave. It was deeper than he thought. He had also been stabbed twice, and still had an AK-47 hanging on his back. His small gun jammed after the 4th shot because of sand. Before it jammed, he managed to kill 3 men. Then he used his knife. 1 enemy was stabbed through the heart, but another one fought back. That man was cut and stabbed at least 10 times. The kid panicked because it was his first time in a fight. But what scared him was that even though Hardy was badly hurt, he kept dragging himself toward the boy, knife in hand. We knew he intended to kill the boy as soon as he got close enough. The medic had to use morphine twice to knock him out. Hardy was still swinging the knife at us, thinking we were enemies. It took 15 minutes for him to realize we were not. We followed Hardy's trail while waiting for the helicopter and found 5 more dead enemies, all with their throats cut. One of the men Hardy killed was the son of a Taliban leader, and the boy was his grandson. It got dangerous for people with blonde hair, so they brought in hair dye for a while. We even got blonde wigs and left bits of them around on patrol to confuse the enemy. Hardy was back in the U.S. by then. You hear many wild stories over there, but I never thought they were real until then. Hardy was just one of those guys sent out alone to cause as much trouble as possible. I wonder how many enemies are enjoying paradise because of him. He was the toughest man I ever saw. The major remembered when he first treated Hardy. PTSD was a new idea back then, and the military was worried. They wanted a full profile before they let him go back to civilian life. The major read the first report, which said Hardy should have been dismissed for an earlier incident with a drill instructor. When the major met Hardy, he was surprised. Hardy seemed like a happy country boy, always with a smile. It took a long time to understand his thoughts and values. The first breakthrough came when Hardy talked about his childhood. The smile disappeared then as he recalled tougher times. The Major remembered Hardy's exact words. "I was 12. My sister was 11. Dad was always in trouble, always going to jail for a while. Finally, he got caught stealing cars. His lawyer said he would go away for a long time but would try to reduce the sentence. The lawyer said bail would be lowered, but it would take a few days. Grandpa posted bail, and Mom and the lawyer planned to get Dad out the next day. But Dad hitched a ride back home to surprise Mom. When we got back from school, he was in his truck. He met us and took us to the truck. I remember he had blood on his white t-shirt. 'Kids, we're gonna sit out here for a while. I need to tell you something. I love you both with all my heart. I'm going away, probably for a long time. Hardy, I want you to be a man now and take care of your sister. Promise me, son." I promised. Then he turned to my sister. "Sissy, you're going to be as pretty as your mom. Find a good man, love him as hard as you can, and promise me, swear on your soul you'll never cheat on him. I know you don't understand now, but you will later." He held us crying. It was the only time I saw him cry. We could hear sirens, and soon 3 sheriff's cars came into the yard. The first cop was Will Rob Williams. He was a deputy then, but later became sheriff. He was a family friend. His daughter was a year behind Sissy, and Mom used to babysit her. I was surprised to see him with his gun out. "Jimmy, my dad's name, step away from the kids," Will Rob said. Dad stood up, spreading his arms out, calm. "Will Rob, I don't have a gun. It's on the bedroom floor. I called you guys. I surrender. Don't scare my kids anymore." He held his hands out to be cuffed. Will Rob cuffed him and put him in the car before going inside. He didn't know I was right behind him. Dad caught them in bed together. He pulled an old gun from the dresser and shot them both. I went into shock. It took a long time to get over it. 2 years later, Dad was killed in a prison riot protecting a guard. I never really got over it. I got into trouble, ran with the wrong crowd, ended up in juvie a couple of times. Then I got caught for stealing cars like Dad. Will Rob and the judge gave me a chance to join the military and keep a clean record. I actually like the military, but it's not going to be a career for me. If I'm here, it means you guys don't want that either. The Major asked him why he went after the boy when the boy was trying to surrender. When I fell into the cave, the boy was using the machine gun, grinning like he was having fun. One thing I learned a long time ago: never let a live threat get behind you. If he hadn't panicked, I would be dead and he would be a hero in his village. I wasn't about to let him live to kill again. Hardy said it calmly, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. The Major agreed. Hardy would never be career material, too unstable. There were many who would have recruited him. His unpredictable mind and killer instincts made him very wanted. But the Major fought against that. He was shocked to find that Hardy had taken every chance to learn, needing just 1 more semester to get a business degree. He would be in rehab for at least another year, so the Major pushed him to continue studying. The Major never saw Hardy as a lawyer, but he had the skills. Smart, sharp instincts, able to think fast. By the time Hardy finished his physical and mental rehab, the Major believed he could control his temper and instincts enough to be a good citizen. But he still put him on a watch list. In the end, he diagnosed Hardy with PTSD, knowing it wasn't from the military, but from something that happened when he was 12. Now it seemed Hardy had slipped again. If his interview didn't go well, the Major didn't know what would happen next. Gwen hated her life. Dealing with the worst parts of society drained her happiness. It took some getting used to. Her first case was a clear-cut car theft. The guy was caught in the car, with his fingerprints all over it. He claimed he borrowed it from a friend without a name or address. The young man later even denied being in the car. Gwen was stunned. The public defender knew she was inexperienced and tried to get him probation. While new to court, she was familiar with negotiations, which turned out to be most of her job. Karen watched as Gwen decided to make them sweat. "That's nonsense," she shouted. "Your client is on the dash cam being dragged out of the car, cursing. He had crack in his pocket and a blood alcohol level of 0.10, over the legal limit. His criminal record is long." "I'm new and I'd love a trial to sharpen my skills. I have to offer you a deal, but I hope you refuse." "Something about your client makes me sick. Here's the deal. Plead guilty to car theft and I'll overlook the drugs and drinking. I'll even try to get him into rehab. You have until I get back to decide. If you refuse, I'll go after everything and the sentence will triple. With his history, he won't steal a car again soon. She left, letting Karen, the public defender, and the criminal sit there. She really did need to use the bathroom, and when she came back, Karen was grinning. They took the deal before you even flushed. The public defender will spread the word about the tough new lawyer from the north. You did well, but be warned. Not all cases will be that easy. They weren't. The workload was awful. She started taking work home since she had nothing else to do. It got her noticed. Paul called her into his office. Girl, I'm impressed. You've got the makings of a great trial lawyer. But lighten up. All work and no play isn't good. Go out, have fun, talk to people. Rumors are going around about the Ice Queen from the north. You'd be surprised how many guys want to get to know you. Before she could get angry, he changed the subject. How's the divorce? I see you still wear your ring, which keeps the guys away. But if word gets out you're divorcing, they'll come after you hard. She sighed. Her ex, Ivan, was good at putting up roadblocks, pushing for mandatory counseling. So far, his efforts hadn't worked, and oddly, Hardy's lawyer didn't seem in any rush. It had been 6 months since her marriage ended, and she hadn't seen or talked to Hardy since. I don't know how it's going. Nothing has moved. I can't talk to him, and he won't talk to me. I'm losing hope. Damn it. She hated that she could still cry over him. It was worst late at night when she rolled over, expecting him to hold her and kiss her forehead like he always did, only to wake up alone. She would go out for drinks after work on Fridays with Karen and some office friends, or catch a movie with a female friend. She joined a gym to reduce stress. The loneliness and lack of affection were hard to bear. She would have given anything to see Hardy again. She got her wish in an unexpected way. A small old man in his late 60s or early 70s and a tall woman, maybe in her mid-40s, came to see her. They showed up at her apartment. She didn't recognize them, but once they said why they were there, she quickly invited them in. You don't remember us, but we were at your wedding. I'm Joshua Hardy. Hardy Wilkes is my grandson. This is Hildy Baker, my niece. If it's not too much trouble, we'd like to talk with you. She settled them in the living room and offered drinks. Hildy wanted iced tea, but frowned when told it was unsweetened. Gwen wasn't used to the very sweet tea Southerners liked. Joshua wanted a beer. They both took a St. Pauli Girl, Gwen's favorite beer and one of her few treats. After a drink, Joshua began, "We're here about Hardy. He's not doing well. He's been seeing his old military therapist but won't talk. He's tense and the whole family is being very careful around him. You know how dangerous he gets when he's angry. We need your help." Tears filled her eyes again. She couldn't stop them. "I'd love to help, but the last thing he wants is to see me, but I'll do anything you ask." Joshua cleared his throat. "He still cares for you. I know he keeps a picture of you on his dresser. He says it's to remind him how stupid he was, but I don't think he believes that. He's really ashamed of what he did when he found you with that man, not for hitting him or slapping you, but for what he did afterward." She didn't know, but the memory of that night was so bad for him that he couldn't even sleep properly for months. It was awful for me, too. If he wanted to show me why cheating is terrible, he did. What he doesn't know is that I was drugged that night, and what happened was basically rap. I remember trying to fight him off. Hildy perked up. "If that's true, it might help. Do you have proof?" "I can get a copy of the drug test from the hospital. Would that help?" She frowned. "It might. But he told us you had done it before with that man in Paris. Is that true?" Gwen flushed. There wasn't an easy way to explain. "I'm ashamed to say it's true. And there were drugs involved, but I took them willingly. It was a stupid, selfish thing, and I don't know why I did it." Joshua spoke sadly. "Well, that might ruin everything. If it had been one time and you were drugged, he might forgive. But twice? I don't think he will." Then he told her about Hardy's parents and how it made him hate cheaters. She paled as she heard the story. "It gets worse. Did you know he has a sister? He hasn't seen or talked to her in 10 years. Why? Because he threw her out of the family. She got married to a good guy. 2 years later, she cheated and Hardy caught her. He beat them both up. Then he even hit her husband for allowing it to happen, though he didn't know. They made up 3 months later and moved far away because they were scared of him. She has 3 kids now. I only see them when I visit because she's afraid to come back. Her lover vanished without a trace, left his car, clothes, everything. There's a pond out in the woods no one will fish in. The news stunned her. Had she married such a monster? Why did she still love him and want him back? Please, Mr. Hardy, how can I help? I'll do anything. Well, first, you need to see him face to face. The family reunion is always the second Saturday in September. That's 3 weeks away. He never misses it. I always wondered why you didn't come, but no matter. Be there, and we'll make sure you meet somewhere safe. Are you willing? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Come out this Sunday for dinner. I mean lunch. I'd like to talk more. Give Hildy your number. She'll give you directions. Thank you for your time. They stood up to leave, and she surprised them by kissing his cheek and hugging Hildy. She stepped back, embarrassed, but he patted her cheek, and Hildy smiled. See you Sunday. Get there before noon. She watched them drive off in their old truck, feeling hope for the first time in months. Hardy was uneasy, still tense. The session with Major Stein was tough, and he was surprised when he set up regular meetings every 2 weeks. He even prescribed some meds to help him relax. Hardy hated taking them, but he did. They seemed to help. Crystal coming home also helped, but he knew she had plans, so he kept his distance. He wasn't interested in a relationship now. She knew it, but made it clear she was available. The cases helped, too. Greg let him pick the ones he wanted to work on. There were many. His skills were rare, especially if he worked for free. Most were people caught in bad situations. Some were guilty but had good reasons. He tried to clear the innocent and get fair treatment for the guilty. His reputation grew, and job offers came from top firms all over the country. Greg called him almost weekly. He wanted to talk about his daughter, but Hardy always shut down the conversation and hung up. Hardy didn't know, but Greg was also keeping a close watch on his daughter and was happy with what he saw. Paul had good things to say about her, but was worried about her mental health. All she does is work and go home. She even takes work home. Her drug tests are clear, but she's like a hermit. I don't think she even shops. How healthy is that? He still talked to her weekly, and the conversations were always the same. She'd talk about a case in general and ask for advice. Then she'd ask if Ivan had any news. The answer was always the same. He was working on it. What he didn't tell her was that he had talked to Hardy's lawyer, suggesting he delay filing motions. The lawyer was shocked, but they were old friends, and Greg convinced him, with Ivan's help, that maybe divorce wasn't best for anyone. So, things slowed down a lot. The only good thing for Hardy was getting close with his family again, mostly his cousins on his mom's side. His dad had one brother who died in Vietnam and a sister who died in a car crash young. He and his sister were the only ones left to take care of their grandpa's farm. He had a special place in his heart for Aunt Hildy. She was like a mother to him. Every Sunday he ate dinner with his grandpa and whatever cousins came by. Even though they were related through his daughter-in-law, they still treated Joshua like a grandparent. Maybe because he was kind, or because their other grandparents were gone, and family meant a lot to them. He often thought his family ran like a matriarchal society. They respected his grandpa, but Aunt Hildy was the one who settled arguments, listened to the younger folks, and made the final call. No one questioned her. Thankfully, she was wise and had a lot of common sense. This was common in the South. If you saw someone, they first asked, "How's your mama and them?" meaning the rest of the family. It showed what was important to them. Everyone who came usually brought a side dish. There was always plenty of fried chicken, pork chops, hamburgers, or steaks. If there wasn't enough, they made more. It was the highlight of his week. He was very sad that he had to travel and miss it this week. Gwen didn't know what to expect, so when Hildy gave her advice, she was thankful. Not much of a cook, she showed up at 9 with 2 cases of beer, ready to help Hildy. Joshua was happy to see the beer and iced it down, but Hildy warned him not to start drinking it before dinner. By 10, people started arriving. Gwen had learned how to make tea and had several gallons ready to chill. She met a lot of people and knew she couldn't remember all the names. "Don't worry, child, it'll come to you. Right now, just smile and be polite. They'll warm up to you quickly," Hildy said. What surprised her the most was the teens and younger folks calling her Aunt Gwen. Hildy explained, "Be proud. When they call an older woman aunt, it's a sign of respect and acceptance. They all know who you are, but most are too polite to bring it up. Now, help me with the burgers and hot dogs. It was the nicest afternoon she had since moving south. After the meal, she sat with women of all ages under an oak tree, while the men played games and drank beer. Then came the questions. Was she really a lawyer? What was Boston like? Did she like it here? Questions seemed endless until one girl brought up the tough subject. What was Uncle Hardy like? To the younger ones, he was a legend. A war hero, married to a Boston woman, protector of the weak. She chose her words carefully. He's the best man I've ever met. Kind, thoughtful, a true Southern gentleman. One girl was stubborn. If he's so great, why aren't you together anymore? The family talks, you know. You're in Birmingham and he's here. I heard he hit you. Tears formed, but she wouldn't let them fall. He didn't beat me. He hit me once, thinking it was self-defense. We're not together because I was weak and foolish and did something bad that made him lose respect for me. I'm trying to fix that. Hildy had been listening. Melissa Sue, watch your tongue and manners. Your Aunt Gwen needs some support now. Melissa Sue quickly apologized and gave Gwen a hug. That opened the floodgates, and tears flowed. The girls immediately comforted her. For the first time, she could cry in public, and the tears were hard to stop. Later, as she helped clean up, Hildy gave her words of encouragement. You made friends today. You didn't lie, and you took responsibility. They respect that. Don't be pushy. They think that's a Yankee thing and don't like it. Just be yourself, and they'll come around. Now take some leftovers home. I'll get the Tupperware. Hildy hugged her, and Joshua surprised everyone by kissing her on the cheek. That simple act made her feel included in the family. As she drove away, she thought of all the social events she had attended over the years. None compared to sitting at a picnic table with people who saw her as family, who didn't care about her social standing or money. To them, she was just Aunt Gwen. The mood was serious at work that Monday, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about the future. As she got ready for another day of defending the public, Paul called her into his office. Karen was there, and Gwen felt something bad was about to happen. Paul seemed unsure, just talking without saying much. She let him go on for a while before interrupting. For goodness sake, Paul, what's going on? He sighed. Here's a bit of history. We've got trouble. We're right in the middle of a drug route. They bring drugs through the swamps and coastlines of Louisiana and Mississippi, and from there, it's a straight shot north. You know how many highways cross through town. We've made some arrests and seized some big shipments, but it's just a drop in the bucket. We've noticed more drug activity recently, and we think the cartel that's moving through has decided to stay. The local gangs are pushing out the smaller dealers. Turf wars are starting, and it's becoming chaotic. On Saturday, we caught a break. A county deputy pulled over a car that was swerving. The driver was high and had enough cocaine in the car for a felony charge. The man arrested is Raul Escobar, nephew of the cartel leader, Don Vicente. The cartel has a history of targeting cops and lawyers involved in their cases. Rumors are spreading fast. This could get bad. The trial won't start for a few months, but Raul is in jail with no bail because he's a foreigner and likely to run. I want you to handle the case. You don't have family here, so you're less of a target. Will you take it? She thought for a moment. So I'm the sacrifice. I'll be gone in a few months, and only you and the cop might face any danger. Minimizing risk, huh? He looked ashamed. Basically, yes, they can't threaten you. If they check your background, they'll see your father and husband can't be easily threatened either. We'll keep an eye on you. Can you do it? She smiled. Give me the file. Hardy wasn't in a good mood. His cousin and close friend Harry had just visited with bad news. They hugged and caught up. Harry was married and had 2 kids, both boys. His wife may not be a beauty queen, but Harry's love made her beautiful to him. Harry used to be Hardy's right-hand man in the old days. He wasn't a planner, but he was reliable and brave. Together, they made a great team. When Hardy joined the military, another cousin, Roy, took over. Roy didn't have Hardy's style, but he got things done. Harry came with a problem. Roy was eyeing the armored car that serviced the local Walmart. It could hold up to $300,000, making it tempting. He had a plan and wanted Harry to execute it. Hardy stopped him. Hold on. I'm a lawyer now. Don't tell me about anything illegal or I'll have to report it. He saw disappointment in Harry's face. But if you're talking about a made-up situation and want my legal opinion, I won't mind giving it. Thanks, Hardy. I run a body shop now, making enough to support my family. I'm too old for Roy's wild ideas. If this were happening and these were the plans, would it work? Hardy looked it over. Robbing an armored car is like robbing a bank. Whoever does it could get at least 7 years in federal prison. This plan won't work. There's too much delay. These vehicles have GPS, video streaming, panic buttons, and stronger security. The robbers would need to be in and out in under 10 minutes, including dealing with armed guards and taking the cash. Tell them to forget this and go after something easier. Thanks, Hardy. I appreciate it. They shook hands, and Hardy gave him some cards. Here, in case one of the cousins gets into trouble. Tell them to say I'm their lawyer and nothing else until I get there. Got it? Harry turned the job down, using Hardy's analysis. Roy got 3 younger cousins to do it instead. They were caught within an hour. Hardy got them to plead guilty since they had no other choice. They stayed loyal and didn't say it was Roy's idea. Each got 7 to 10 years in prison. Roy was furious and warned Hardy to stay out of his business. Hardy told him to stop planning things that get kids locked up. Roy was worried. His people were starting to doubt him. A new gang was moving in, money was down, and he didn't see a good end in sight. He felt Hardy was undermining him. I need to teach Hardy a lesson. But if I mess with Hildy or Joshua, the cousins not involved in the business could make life hard for us. Too bad there's nothing I can use against him. Ronnie Wilkes, Roy's enforcer, was big and brutal. He didn't like Hardy because Hardy wasn't scared of him. Well, cousin, there's always his ex-wife. They're split up, but you know he hates it when someone messes with what's his. Roy laughed. I'm not going all the way up north to bother his ex. Ronnie grinned. You don't have to. She's an assistant district attorney right here in Jefferson County. She's using her maiden name, Canaday. If we visit her, he might get the message. Harry, listening, gave his opinion. That's probably the dumbest idea you've ever had, Roy. Hardy's not called hard-ass for nothing. This might backfire and make you look foolish. Ronnie scoffed. He's old news. A lawyer now. How tough can he be? I bet he's soft and can barely walk up the courthouse steps. Harry laughed. You keep thinking that. I'll put that on your tombstone. I've seen him. He's bigger and stronger than ever, and it's not fat. But go on. Find out for yourself. Don't think for a minute when this little plan fails I won't be there laughing and saying I told you so, he said, walking out with a chuckle. They had been watching her. She always came home around 6 and rarely went out. He couldn't believe how easy it was to trick her. They just said they were her cousins with a message from Hardy, and she welcomed them in. Gwen didn't like the way the 2 men looked, but when they said they knew Hardy, she took off the safety chain and let them in. It happened so fast. The big guy grabbed her, tied her to a kitchen chair, and stuffed a gag in her mouth. The older one pulled up a chair in front of her. Listen, Missy, he said. We need some promises from your man, and we leave quietly. If he resists, your life gets rough. I'll start with letting Ronnie get closer to you. If I take your gag off, promise not to scream. I need you to talk so Hardy knows I'm here with you. Got it? Now I'm gonna call him. She nodded. When the gag came off, she smiled, which made Roy uneasy. You know who my husband is, and you're stupid enough to do this? I hope he lets me watch when he catches you. And if you think I'll call him, forget it. I don't know any of his numbers. Trying to sound confident, Roy told her not to worry. He had the number. I'll put it on speaker so he can hear us, he said. Hardy picked up on the 3rd ring. Hardy Wilkes, he answered. Hardy, Roy here. I hear you've been snooping around my business. I don't like that. I've got someone here who wants to say hello. He held the phone up to her. She looked straight at him and spoke. Hardy, honey, I want you to teach these guys a lesson. Roy pulled the phone back. That's right. I'm with your woman. Let's keep this calm, all right? Why would it get ugly, Roy? I heard you wanted to talk, so I stopped by your house. You have a lovely family. It was the first time Gwen saw a man look like he might faint. Now, Hardy, don't, Roy pleaded, but Hardy kept talking. Your wife makes good pie. I brought a little surprise. I've got your daughter June on my lap. We're out on the porch getting signal. She's pretty squirmy. Here, June Bug, tell your dad what I brought you. A child's excited voice said, Daddy, guess what? Uncle Hardy brought us tickets to 6 Flags. We're going this weekend. Isn't Uncle Hardy the best? Are you coming home soon, Daddy? That's enough, June Bug. Go see if your mom will give me more pie, okay? Hardy said. They could hear the little girl run off, calling for her mom. Roy, now nervous, spoke up. Hardy, let's not let this get out of hand. Shut up, Roy. You should spend more time with your family. Kids like June disappear every day, and your oldest, she's breaking hearts already. Watch her close. Beautiful girls can get into trouble if you're not careful. You get me, Roy? Roy looked like he was gasping for air. Gwen couldn't help it. I think he hears you just fine, honey, she said. Good. Now, Roy, go home to your family. You're going to Six Flags this weekend. 3 days, 2 nights on me. I'm calling Junebug Monday. If she doesn't say she had fun, I'll be upset. You won't like that. And Roy, stay out of my business, you hear? Until I get the divorce papers, she's still my responsibility. If Ronnie's there, tell him if he so much as messed up one hair on her head, I'll cut off his hand, finger by finger. There's nowhere to hide. You understand? Roy finally found his voice. Whatever you want, Hardy, you got. I'm sorry about this. If you need anything, just say the word. Please, leave my family alone. Glad we sorted this, Roy. Remember, if Junebug doesn't have a good time, I'll be looking for answers. I'm taking the rest of this pie home. Kiss your family for me. You're lucky. The line went dead. They gently untied Gwen. Please tell him we didn't mean anything and we didn't hurt you. Please. She laughed. You fools. If he had wavered, I would have had a bad night. I'll tell him you roughed me up and let Ronnie get handsy. Which funeral home should I send flowers to? Now get out of my house. They nearly ran out the door. She leaned against it, thinking about Hardy's past. He still loves me. He threatened a whole family for me. I got to hear his voice. All in all, a good day. 6 months ago, that would have scared her. Now she went to bed and slept like a baby. Gwen got ready for the reunion. Hildy said it would be outside most of the day. She finally chose a modest white tank top and green shorts. It looked just right. Comfortable, but nice. Getting her hair and makeup ready was a different story. Because she was going to be outside, she used only a little makeup and put her hair up in a style that seemed casual, but actually took some effort. She found that she enjoyed having shorter hair. It wasn't as long or as hard to manage as it used to be. She kept going over in her mind what she would say to him if she got the chance to talk to him. They were cooking whole pigs, chickens, and even a side of beef. 4 big cookers were running full speed when she arrived, and the smell was amazing. Joshua was looking out for her. Maybe he was happy to see her, or maybe it was the 5 cases of beer she brought. She had gotten him into St. Pauli beer, and now he almost caused an uproar, saying it was better than Budweiser. Hildy grabbed her, gave her an apron, and sent her to the kitchen. She was greeted with a chorus of, "Hey, Aunt Gwen," though she was sure she hadn't met many of them before. They put her to work on the slaw line, cutting cabbage in a food processor for 90 minutes. The men were setting up tables and bringing out side dishes. She kept looking around for Hardy. Hildy noticed. Relax, honey. He's coming. One of the cousins got into some trouble and he had to go fix it. He's on his way. Why don't you freshen up? This kitchen hasn't been kind to your hair. So much for her effort to look simply elegant. She gave up, combed her damp hair into a ponytail, and hoped for the best. Finally, everyone gathered for the blessing. At events like this, you always have a blessing, whether you believe or not. A few cousins had a band and set up a stage for later. They handed a microphone to Hildy. I'm going to do my Minnie Pearl imitation. Howdy! The sound echoed off the low hills. Everyone shouted back, Howdy! She pretended to be disappointed. You all forget I'm related to you. I know you can be louder than that. We're not eating until I'm satisfied. Howdy! The next town probably heard them. That's better. Thanks so much for coming. There's nothing better than family. Before we eat, make sure you thank the cooks. Some of them have been at it for hours. And thank the ladies for the side dishes and great-looking desserts. Now, bow your head, and let's remember those who can't be here and those who will never be here again. Keep them in your hearts. After a short silence, she spoke again. God, thank you for friends and family. We are nothing without them. Bless the new members of the family and keep the ones who have passed close to you. Help those who are lost find their way back home. Help those who have drifted apart come back to each other. Help us be better people. Bless this food and everyone here. Amen. There was a loud, Amen, followed by a rush to the tables. Gwen stood still, touched by the blessing, and then added her own quiet prayer, the most sincere one she had ever said. Hildy hugged her. Come on, girl, before they eat it all. She wasn't sure what all she ate. There was something called burgoo, made with mutton from a cousin over in Tennessee. Another cousin from South Carolina brought Brunswick stew, which tasted good once you got over how it looked. There were about 20 kinds of homemade BBQ sauces, from very sweet to very hot. There were all sorts of beans, corn, potatoes, squash, and green vegetables. There were dishes she couldn't even identify. Gwen wondered why the tables didn't collapse under all the food, and the desserts. Oh my. Carrot cake, chocolate cake, fresh coconut cake, Appalachian stack cake, pineapple upside-down cake, banana bread, all sorts of pies and cookies and gelatin molds. Just looking at it made her feel full. No one let health worries stop them from eating, so she grabbed a plate and joined in. They knew she wasn't familiar with a lot of the dishes, so they made a show of introducing them to her. Try Cousin Fred's fried chicken, Aunt Zelda's carrot salad, the greens, the beans. She thought she might explode as the jokes got bolder when they got comfortable with her. Try this sauce, city girl, don't chicken out. Yeah, it's hot. Drink this beer, it'll help. Don't hurt her feelings, eat it. Hildy came to her rescue. Stop it, or she'll be known as the girl who ate Alabama. She'll be around for a while. She can try it all later. Stop before she pops. Hildy took her hand and led her inside. Hardy just called. He got held up. He'll be here in about an hour. Why don't you fix him a plate of his favorites and set it aside? That'll give you a chance to talk to him. Come on, I'll help. They ended up making 3 plates, one with meats, one with veggies, and one with dessert. Hildy smiled. They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Feed him this and he'll be so full he can't run, and happy enough not to fuss. Well, not too much, I hope. Gwen hoped so too. She loosened the belt on her shorts. They had elastic and she was so stuffed she was sure they wouldn't slip. A decision she later regretted. An hour passed, and still, no Hardy. He called Hildy and said he didn't think he'd get the cousin bailed out in time to come. Hildy insisted he stop by, if for nothing else, to get the plates of food she saved for him. He promised, but said it would be at least 2 more hours. The older folks dozed off, full from all the food and family company. The younger ones tidied up a bit before they too took a break. The kids were running around, full of youthful energy. Gwen and Hildy walked around, chatting with everyone. Gwen felt like she was campaigning, shaking hands and meeting people. She didn't mind, though. Somewhere along the way, she lost Hildy and found herself walking with a cousin her age. They joined a group near the creek. Gwen soon discovered the family's drink, ginger fizz. Half the family made corn liquor, the other half made a spicy ginger ale. It was strong stuff. Gwen tried a sip and it burned her mouth. She turned pale, then red, and started gasping for air, making everyone laugh. Don't worry, Aunt Gwen. The burning will stop soon. Everyone new gets surprised like this. Here, try this one. She hesitated but then took a sip. This time it had lemon, orange, and lime slices with some cherries. She liked it and ended up drinking 3 in an hour, not knowing it had just as much liquor. She went to the bathroom, talked to Aunt Hildy, and found out Hardy would be there soon. She made her way back to the creek, stopping to chat with people on the way. She felt happy. Seeing Hardy would make it a perfect day. The band started playing country and old rock music. They were pretty good. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the day. Then everything went wrong. Crystal Ann was at a table with her new friends, talking to a big guy with a cap. She was laughing and playing with her hair. Gwen didn't want to see Crystal. She had long red hair and was wearing a white halter top and tiny shorts. All the men were staring at her. At least she wasn't around Hardy. But then Gwen's world shattered. Crystal knocked the guy's cap off, revealing shaggy, pale blonde hair. She ruffled his hair. The man turned and Gwen found herself looking into Hardy's eyes. His hair was longer and he had a short beard, but his cool gray eyes bored into her. Gwen lost it. All her plans were ruined. Hardy was with her. She didn't even remember starting the fight. "Get your hands off my husband!" She grabbed Crystal's hair and pulled. Crystal hit her, and they both tumbled into the creek, which was waist-deep in some parts. Gwen didn't let go of Crystal's hair as they hit the cold water. Crystal tried to stand, but Gwen dunked her head again. Crystal gasped for air, and Gwen yanked her halter top off. By now, a crowd had gathered. Gwen thought she could get out while Crystal was stuck in the water, covering her chest. Gwen started up the bank, swinging the halter top and laughing. Crystal jumped out of the water, swearing, and grabbed Gwen's shorts. The shorts slid down, revealing a black thong. Gwen wore it, hoping Hardy would notice it. She slid back into the water, and Crystal slapped her. Gwen scratched her neck, drawing blood. They rolled in the water, both half drowned. Half of Gwen's tank top and her bra were gone. The crowd was cheering, but Gwen didn't care. She was going to fight Crystal until the end. Suddenly a voice shouted, "Stop that right now! Shame on both of you!" Hildy dumped a cooler on them, shocking them still. She looked at two big cousins. "Shirts off, now!" They tossed her their shirts. She threw them to Gwen and Crystal. "Put these on and get to the house, or else I'll show you what real discipline looks like. Now!" They hurried into the shirts and ran to the house, holding them down past their bottoms. Hildy followed close behind. Joshua met them and sent them inside. Hildy paced before them. "I hope you're proud. The cousins won't forget this reunion. What a way for two supposed ladies to act." They felt like kids being scolded. Crystal said, "She started it." Gwen shot back, "No, you did by touching my husband. Do it again and it'll be worse." "Whatever. You gave him up when you cheated. I, at least, would be faithful to him." That hurt Gwen more than she wanted to admit. "Until the divorce is final, he's mine, and I'll stop the divorce. We'll be together again, you'll see." Crystal sneered. "Sure, just as soon as I get a snowball in hell." "Enough! Crystal, go with Joshua. He'll show you my room. Find something to wear home." After Crystal left, Hildy looked at Gwen sadly. "Well, if you wanted to make an impression on him, you did." Gwen teared up. "Is he still here? Do you think an apology will make a difference?" "Sorry, dear, he's already left. You girls really embarrassed him, and I didn't think that was possible." She started to cry. "I've messed everything up. I had one chance and blew it. I might as well give up." Hildy patted her head. "Don't be too quick to give up. You fought for him and he likes that. This whole thing might have helped you." She hugged Hildy for a bit, then sat back. With a small smile, she asked, "So, did I win?" Hildy grinned. "I'd say it's a tie, but it was one heck of a fight." Gwen giggled. "What would my father think if he saw me now? He'd probably be really shocked." Hildy looked uneasy. "Sweetie, you should know." She stopped talking and looked over Gwen's shoulder. "What is it, Aunt Hildy?" She heard someone clear their throat and thought Joshua had come back. She turned. "Daddy?" Yes, it was him. Greg Cannaday, a respected man from Boston, standing there looking at his muddy, messy daughter in just an oversized shirt. "What are you doing here?" "I was invited. Someone named Hildy called and told me how well you were doing, how proud I should be, and how much you missed me, so I came to visit and enjoy some Southern cooking." "Daddy, this isn't what it looks like. How do you know what I think it looks like? It looks like you fought one of my workers over a man." "It wasn't that bad. Not that bad. You two were rolling in the water and mud in front of 100 people barely dressed. It looked like an episode of Jerry Springer." "Daddy, I'm so sorry." "Sorry? Is that how a well-raised Boston girl acts?" "Oh, hell!" He started laughing hard, shaking with laughter he couldn't stop. Hildy came back in, first smiling, then laughing with him. "Damn, child, I send you down here and—" Another burst of laughter. "You go full Southern on me. Your grandmother would be proud." She was confused. "What does my grandmother have to do with this?" "Your grandmother was from here, Jefferson County. You're 1/4 Alabamian. Virginia Howe from the Birmingham Howes. Your grandfather met her while working here and fell in love. Her parents weren't happy, but they loved each other until he died. Your grandmother was never the same after he passed. That's where your trust fund comes from, old steel money. She would be proud of you today." "Why would she be proud? I made a fool of myself and pushed Hardy farther away. I've only made things worse." "Maybe not," said Hildy. "Hardy just called to check on you. He said if any videos show up, someone will pay dearly. I bet a lot of phones are being wiped clean right now." Gwen's hand flew to her mouth. Her most embarrassing moment, captured forever. This couldn't get any worse. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Her dad stayed for 4 days. He watched her in court and took her to lunch and dinner. He also spent time with his old friend Paul, talking privately. He had to admit she had grown up some. It felt good, but the only issue was Hardy. He couldn't understand why she wanted him back. To him, she had betrayed Hardy twice, no matter the reasons. "Think of it this way, dear. Have you heard the old story about the woman and the snake? She shook her head. In the story, a woman finds a snake that fell from a wall. It's cold and the snake can't survive, so he asks her to take him in. He talks so sweetly and looks so beautiful that she takes him in. She keeps him warm by the fire. She feeds him and cares for him, telling him how beautiful he is. Finally, summer comes. It gets warm and the snake doesn't need her anymore. One day, while she's holding him, he bites her. As she lies dying, she asks, "Why? I saved you. Why would you bite me?" The snake just looks at her and says, "You knew I was a snake before you picked me up." He paused. "Do you understand? You knew Allan was trouble, but you still did drugs with him in Paris. You let him into your home while trying to get Hardy back. What happened to you was wrong, but you knew what Allan was like. So you need to take some responsibility." And that's exactly how Hardy sees it. You let trouble into your home knowing what it was. She sighed. "Will I get him back?" He didn't want to tell her, but needed to. "I don't think so, dear. You hurt him very badly. True, you didn't know his past and how he'd react, but you still cheated on him. And be honest, you didn't treat him very well before the incident. When did you stop respecting him?" "I never stopped respecting him," she burst out, "but I did take him for granted. I thought his love for me would get us through anything." "Including cheating on him?" "No. You know I didn't mean for that to happen, and I never wanted him to find out." "Regardless, it did happen, and he did find out. Be honest, you must have thought, even a little, that he would forgive you." She couldn't look him in the eye. That told him everything. He sighed. "There's more news." Hardy had finally had enough of dragging the divorce out. He told his lawyer if things didn't start moving, he was fired. Ivan was doing his best, but he knew he couldn't delay much longer. She felt like fainting. It was almost over. She hung her head and cried. Greg left the next day. On his way out, he stopped to see Hardy. "How are you?" Hardy grunted. "As well as can be expected. Lots of cases to look over, lots of people needing help." "That's not what I meant, and you know it. Are you still going to divorce her?" "You know I am. No way to change your mind?" "She's grown up a lot in the last 8 months. I believe she loves you." "I still love her. Maybe always will. But love isn't enough. I have to trust her, and that will never happen again. It's not just the cheating. I feel she was lying from the day we got married. She never wanted what I wanted, even after we talked about it and she agreed. She never wanted to settle down, and now I think she never wanted children. The best thing I can do is move on. I still want a family and time is wasting." "I understand. But tell me, was all you wanted kids? You both started the marriage based on lies and half-truths. You should have told her about your past. She should have told you how she felt about a family and her history with drugs and cheating. She did wrong, but you need to take some of the blame, too. If you had both been honest, you probably would never have gotten married and wouldn't be here now." Hardy started to speak, but Greg waved him off. "Stop. I shouldn't have said that, but you're both family to me. You're the son I never had, and I'm sad to lose you. But let's not talk about that. I really wanted to talk about the new case Gwen is working on." He described the Escobar case in detail and the danger Gwen might be in. "Paul promised me protection for her, but you know how thin law enforcement is these days. As a favor to me, will you keep an eye on her? You have resources they don't. Gwen told me about your talk with your cousin Roy." Hardy smiled, remembering. He called the following week, and little June nearly talked his ear off. Her mother promised him many pies as a thank you for making Roy see the importance of a happy home life. "I'm not silly, and I grew up on stories about you. Whenever Roy gets a little neglectful, I just say it's time to bake you a pie, and he perks right up. Thank you. Now, do you like peaches?" Cousin Ronnie was another story. He had heard his boasting and caught him in one of those rough juke joints you can still find around the state. Ronnie made a big mistake. He bragged about how he was going to beat Hardy up. Hardy slapped him hard, then turned and walked outside, calling behind him. "Come on out, loudmouth. I won't hit you, but I will slap you until you cry. I may even spank you like a kid before I'm done. You might even cry." Ronnie, drunk, rushed at Hardy, screaming, "I'm gonna kill you!" Hardy looked bored as he stepped aside and slapped Ronnie, pushing him with his other hand. Ronnie fell face first into the gravel parking lot. He sprang up with a roar, more mad than smart. Hardy stepped in and headbutted him hard. Ronnie's nose flattened and blood flew. Dazed, he stood with his arms hanging, and Hardy took full advantage, slapping him back and forth across the face. Ronnie started to cry from the pain. "Lord Almighty!" someone yelled. "He is crying like a baby!" That made Ronnie even angrier. He was skilled, but not at Hardy's level. He got a few good hits in, but Hardy ignored them. Hardy then started hitting him just above the groin in front and in the back on his kidneys. That much pain was too much, and Ronnie's bladder let loose. He fell to the gravel, half out of it. Hardy pulled him up by his collar easily and pushed him against a truck. "Well, you've cried and wet yourself. Do I have to spank you too, or do we have an understanding?" Ronnie nodded. "Yes. Seems we're done here. Remember what I told you if you touched my woman?" Ronnie tried to speak through bruised lips, but Hardy cut him off. "Shut up. Time to pay the price." His hand moved and a small knife opened. Ronnie heard a snap and felt pain, looking down to see his pinky hanging at an odd angle. Hardy put the knife back in his pocket. "If I hear you're even near her again, I'll come back and it'll be every finger on both your hands. Understand?" Ronnie nodded. Hardy looked at the crowd. "Anybody got something to say?" People suddenly found other things to look at, avoiding his gaze. "All right, then. One of you take him to see Doc Thomas. He's used to this sort of thing and won't say a word. I'd appreciate it. Tell him to send me the bill. Have a good evening." He got into his big truck, spraying gravel all over Ronnie as he drove away. Ronnie was crushed. No one feared him now. His job as an enforcer was over. Roy replaced him with a younger cousin just back from Iraq. Ronnie ended up doing odd jobs for the group. He spent his days plotting, always thinking about how to hurt Hardy Wilkes. Doc Thomas was Karen Thomas's granddad. He told her that hard-ass Wilkes was back and more dangerous than before, which meant more work for him. Karen later asked Gwen if she had met Ronnie Wilkes. Gwen made a face. "Yes, he and a man named Roy came to visit me recently. They wanted to connect with family, I guess. I didn't like either of them. I doubt they will come back." Karen smiled. "You probably won't see Ronnie again. Someone who looks like your husband beat him up badly. He's got bruises, a broken finger, and is really hurt. They say the guy slapped him until he cried and then hit him a few more times, making him soil himself. Too bad he didn't kill him. He's a useless person if ever there was one." Gwen smiled as she said it, and Karen felt uneasy. Hardy promised Greg he would look out for her. "I have some cousins who need work. They can watch over her." Greg offered to pay, but Hardy refused. "You can't charge family for something you'd do anyway. That's not how we do things." Greg didn't give up. "Don't call it pay, call it expenses. I want them to focus on her, not worry about money." Hardy agreed, though he wasn't happy about it. Greg brought up another topic. "Since we're talking money, I have papers for you to sign. The prenup you didn't want? It counts now, even without a divorce. You have proof she cheated and she admitted it. $38 million for almost 2 years of being faithful. It's legal and the money is yours. If you don't want it, give it away. But you can't give it back to Gwen." Hardy was angry, but Greg just smiled. "You have no choice. You're rich now. Welcome to the club." They had a quiet dinner, each lost in their thoughts. Then Hardy drove Greg to the airport. The first meeting with Raul Escobar and his lawyers was rough. They claimed entrapment, bad police procedures, and police brutality. They wanted all charges dropped and their client freed. Raul had a smug smile. She just watched them as they made their demands, then she laughed. He got caught driving drunk. It's all on tape, including his rant and threats to the cop. It's his first offense here, but it's serious. He'll serve at least 5 to 7 years if he makes a deal. Fight it in court, and it's 25 years to life. Let me know soon. She left them stunned. Don Vincente was furious. Who did this woman think she was? He would show her. He flew to Birmingham, ready to deal with anyone who stood in his way. He learned that she was already rich and threats wouldn't work. Her mother was in France with a judge, and her father was richer than her. Her soon-to-be ex-husband was a former thug-turned-lawyer, known for his dangerous ties and reputation. He asked for a meeting with the woman and her boss. He tried to reason with her. "Please," he said charmingly. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He didn't know the drugs were in the car, which he borrowed. "Let him out under my watch. I'll even send you monthly drug tests." Gwen turned red. How did he know about the drug tests? "He rented the car, didn't borrow it. His fingerprints are on the bags and his DNA is in one of them. He resisted arrest, tried to bribe the officers, then threatened them using your name. Even if we wanted to drop it, the deputy involved has federal powers. If we drop it, the feds will take over. Cut your losses, Mr. Escobar. Even the best lawyers can't help him now. Let him take a deal. Vicente Escobar was used to having great power. Everyone feared him. But now, this young woman was telling him he couldn't help his nephew. She needed a lesson, and he knew just the people to teach her. Paul was furious after the meeting. That arrogant man. How dare he try to boss us around and make threats? He needs to be put in his place. Gwen stayed calm. Relax, Paul. I've seen people like him in contract talks. They always think they know what's best for everyone. He'll soon understand this is different from what he's used to. None of the people I dealt with in contract law had a history of killing their opponents, so we must all be careful. The mood in the office was grim for days. Raul had faced the judge, was denied bail again, and was scheduled for trial in 3 months. Gwen returned to her normal work. She dealt with drug dealers, thieves, and killers. She tried to settle cases when she could and set trial dates when she couldn't. Paul let her handle the easier cases to gain experience. She lost one early due to a mistake and felt so embarrassed that she became obsessed with research. If a police officer made even a small error, she would catch it. People started calling her a cold, tough lawyer, but no one argued with her results. One of her memorable moments came when she had to talk to a pimp who had beaten one of his workers. Homer Big Daddy Johnson was rude, heavy, and dirty. He weighed around 400 pounds and was known for not being clean. When Gwen entered the interview room, she almost felt sick. He was too cheap to hire a lawyer, so the newest public defender was assigned to him. She looked nervous when Gwen walked in. Big Daddy smiled, showing his 3 gold teeth. Not wanting to stay long, Gwen got to the point. We have 3 witnesses ready to testify. The victim has signed the complaint. You have a history of hurting women, Mr. Johnson. Take a deal, serve 6 months, and return to your life. Refuse, and you face 18 months to 3 years. And I doubt you'd like prison food or their cleanliness. The public defender laughed, making Big Daddy angry. He glared at her. You're supposed to help me. Get me out of this mess. The young defender flinched. He then turned to Gwen. And you? I know you. Your husband and I clashed years ago. He cost me some good workers. I always said I'd get back at him. He sneered, his bad breath almost making Gwen sick. I could turn you out. A good-looking woman like you would bring in money for several years. How would your husband like that? He leaned back, clearly pleased with himself. Gwen smiled, which almost scared him. If you clashed with my husband, he probably beat you then too. He's much stronger now, and he's not as friendly. Maybe I'll tell him what you said. Or I could forget the deal and go after you myself, sending you to prison for a few years. You probably can't wipe your own backside, but others there will help. When you get out, you could give your workers tips on how to survive. Goodbye, Mr. Johnson. Enjoy your new life. The public defender hurried after her. He wants the deal and said he was just joking. Tell him it's a year now, take it or leave it. She kept walking. He'll take it. The young woman hugged Gwen, surprising her. Thanks, Aunt Gwen. I learned a lot. Gwen was shocked. Your name is Chapman, right? Yes. Grandpa Hardy was married to my great-aunt. My father's mother is a Howe. You're related to most of the Chapmans, Grants, and Wilsons here. Great, Gwen thought as she walked back. I'm related to everyone in this state. Paul caught up with her. Got a minute? She smiled. You're the boss. Do you think I'd tell you no? He followed her into her office. Gwen, we have another case for you before the Escobar trial. This one is tricky. Karen and I are both on murder trials, so it's yours. Come on. What's so special about it? She didn't like how he avoided the topic. It deals with the 3 strikes law, and the accused is Sam Wilkes. You know I'll do my best even if he's related to my husband, right? Paul quickly reassured her. We know. The thing is, his lawyer will use this case to challenge the 3 strikes law. This lawyer often wins tough cases. Sounds interesting. What's his name? Oh, you've heard of him, Hardy Wilkes? Her face paled. Hardy. They'd be on opposite sides. Could she handle her feelings? Could she sit near him for days without breaking down? Could she do her job well? A calmness settled over her. Can you handle this? Sarah is on maternity leave and Jimmy is still injured. I have no one else. Don't worry, Paul, I'll do it. Now he has to talk to me. Paul felt relieved. Good. Here's the case file. The kid doesn't deserve this, but the law is clear. Good luck. The case read like a sad story. Sam Wilkes, 23 years old, first trouble at 18, caught driving a stolen car with his cousins. He wasn't behind the wheel and wasn't there when they took it, but he was in the car when the police stopped them. They all said he didn't do it, but still, he got a Class D felony and probation. Second trouble at 20, again because of his cousins. He was caught in the middle of a bar fight. He hit a man with a beer bottle, giving him a concussion and a broken skull. Assault with a deadly weapon causing serious injury. She read the records. I didn't know a beer bottle was that strong. In movies, guys get hit, the bottle breaks, and they don't even slow down. I was just trying to stop him from hurting my cousin. I didn't mean to hurt him, really. I'm sorry. The jury felt sorry for him, but he still did 6 months. Class B felony. 2 months ago, he got caught stealing a car. He took a vintage Mercedes with gull wing doors from his boss, got caught the next day, said he was going to return it. The car was worth over $100,000. Class A felony, 3 strikes. Life in prison, no chance to bargain. The very thought made her feel sick, but the law was the law, and she had to follow it. He was out on bail since it was a non-violent crime, bailed out by Hardy and staying with him. Hardy sat deep in thought. He saw no easy way out for Sammy. The 3 strikes law came from a previous government's reaction to a crime wave. It was very popular for a while, but recently people didn't like it as much. The high cost of long prison terms, the increase in violence among prisoners, and cases like Sammy's frustrated everyone. There was talk of changing the law for non-violent crimes, but nothing had happened yet. A lot depended on the jury. Hardy knew if he could get enough regular people who didn't trust the system, he might have a chance. Maybe he could save Sammy from life in prison. He hoped the assistant district attorney, Jimmy Richards, would be helpful. A long trial wouldn't do anyone any good. Monday morning was miserable. The weather turned cold and rainy, typical winter in central Alabama. A perfect day to fight for someone's life, thought Hardy, as he, Sammy, Crystal Ann, and an assistant for jury analysis walked into the courthouse. They found their table in the courtroom and set up their things. Oddly, the assistant district attorney wasn't there yet. Usually the lawyers talked for a few minutes before the judge entered, but not today. Judge Harlan surprised everyone. At 74, he was retired, but sometimes helped out for a day or two. He enjoyed it, saying it kept him sharp and made him appreciate retirement. He was filling in because the original judge got into trouble. He was caught in his office making a plea deal with a defendant in a very inappropriate way. Caught with a young man who wasn't happy. The judge was allowed to quietly retire, pleading guilty to coercion and other charges. This deal kept him out of jail but not out of trouble. Soon he'd be divorced, broke, and avoided by everyone. Judge Harlan walked in quickly, catching everyone off guard. The bailiff hurriedly called the court to order. "Stay seated, I'm a bit early, let's get started. Call the first case, bailiff." In the matter of the state versus Samuel Jerome Wilkes, grand theft auto, are the defendant and his lawyer here? Hardy stood up. "We are, Wilkes for the defense. Good morning, Your Honor." The judge's eyes twinkled. He and Hardy knew each other well. This was the same judge who had helped Hardy avoid a criminal record by suggesting he join the military. "I'm fine. Good to see you again, Mr. Wilkes. Nice to see you working, even as a defense lawyer." The judge did not like defense lawyers much. The judge frowned, seeing the empty table for the prosecution. "Is the prosecution here?" "No, Your Honor." The bailiff checked his papers. "It's supposed to be Jimmy Richards, but he was in an accident. Representing the state will be—" He was about to say the name when a voice came from the back of the courtroom. "Gwen Cannaday for the state, Your Honor. Sorry for being late, but you started early." Time seemed to stop for Hardy. There she was, professional and just as beautiful as he remembered. He had only seen her once after that picnic from a distance. It still hurt. He moved quickly. "Your Honor, may I approach the bench in light of this change?" The judge was sharp and had noticed Hardy's face when Gwen walked in. He nodded for them both to come forward. Standing near her almost took Hardy's breath away. The familiar smell of her perfume filled his nose. He didn't know where to start. The judge grew impatient. You asked for this, so speak up. What's going on? Judge, I want a different prosecutor assigned. This could be awkward. Why awkward? Somebody better explain, quick. Gwen actually smiled. Mr. Wilkes isn't telling you, sir, that we are husband and wife, estranged but still married. Please tell Mr. Wilkes I will act professionally and follow all rules. If he's scared of me, he can step down so his client can have a fair chance. The judge spoke. Mr. Wilkes, listen up. Your next words better be polite and calm. You look like a bullfrog choking on a bug. I might be the only one here who remembers how you can't control your temper. This is my courtroom, and you both will behave, or I'll put you in the same cell. Do we understand each other, Mr. Wilkes? Yes, sir, Wilkes managed to say. Miss Cannaday, do you understand? She smiled sweetly. Yes, sir, and you're wrong. I'm quite familiar with his temper, very much so, in fact. The judge thought, wow, we haven't even started, and it's already getting interesting. This could be a lot of fun. He made a note to look into the couple later, then banged his gavel, and jury selection began. Gwen quickly got the hang of picking jurors. She fought hard, got a few strict law and order types on, and Hardy got some folks who were more lenient. Most were just regular people, which could work in Hardy's favor. A hung jury is often as good as a not guilty verdict. The first day of the trial set the pace. The media and legal groups on both sides were paying a lot of attention. When it came out that it was wife versus husband, it added more excitement. It started when the plea was entered. Not guilty echoed through the room. No surprise there. What was surprising was when he pushed to get the charges dropped, saying the defendant had permission to drive the car, so it couldn't be stolen. Sam won over the spectators, if not the jurors. He was shy, almost in tears often, making him a tough witness for both sides. Yes, ma'am, he answered when she asked if he took the car. Did the owner know you had it? No, ma'am. So if he didn't know, that means you stole it, right? Hardy jumped up. Objection. Leading the witness, Your Honor. Sustained. Be careful, Miss Cannaday. Noted, Your Honor. She turned to the jurors. He admitted he took the car. He admitted the owner didn't know. Think about it. Turning to the judge, she said she had no more questions at the time. She looked at Hardy. Your witness, Mr. Wilkes. Hardy stood up, glowing. Thank you, Miss Cannaday. He looked at Sammy, who hung his head in fear and shame. Sammy, look at me, son. Sammy raised his head. Sammy, did you take the car? Yes, sir, I did. Why? Because it was dirty. It was filthy. A beautiful car. A classic. It should have been taken care of, cleaned gently and carefully. What did you do when you took it? Did you joyride, ruin the gears, blow the engine? Where were you going when they caught you? Sammy looked horrified. I never even went over the speed limit. They knew I had it. I called Will, the owner's son, to say I had cleaned it and was bringing it back. He yelled at me, saying they didn't know who had it and his dad had called the cops. He promised he'd call them back and tell them it wasn't stolen. Hardy looked at the judge. I'd like to enter this phone call as evidence. He looked at Gwen, and she nodded. She had already heard it. Hello, Jefferson County Sheriff Department. Hey, this is Will Landis. My father reported his Mercedes stolen yesterday. I just found out it wasn't stolen. Jimmy, who does odd jobs on our farm, took it home and cleaned it. He kept asking me to let him clean it, and I joked that when he thought it was dirty enough, he could take it. I didn't know he'd actually do it. Anyway, he's bringing it back now. Sir, are you withdrawing the stolen car complaint? Yes, I am. Sammy wouldn't steal anything. He's just not very smart sometimes. All right, sir. I'll withdraw the complaint. Have a nice day. Thanks, bye. Hardy let the silence hang for a moment before turning back to Sammy. Tell me, how did you get charged if they knew you were bringing it back? I got pulled over right after I talked to Will. Nobody knew it wasn't stolen, and they locked me up. I tried again and again to explain, but they wouldn't listen. Finally, they told me to hush and call my lawyer, so as soon as I got to jail, I called you. Why did you call me? Sammy seemed surprised by the question. Because you're my cousin, and I trust you, and you're the only lawyer I know. This brought a few smiles and chuckles from the crowd. No more questions, Your Honor. The judge looked at his watch. It's 3:30. Want to adjourn early and prepare closing arguments? Gwen asked to present closing arguments before they adjourned. I promise it'll be short. We might even finish both sides before 5. May I proceed? The judge nodded. She got up and paced in front of the jurors. "Ladies and gentlemen, Sammy seems like a nice, gentle person. I'm sure he wouldn't harm a soul on purpose. No disrespect to the defendant, but he isn't very smart. I'm sure he meant well. I'm sure he never meant to keep the car. If he were a little smarter, he would have known his friend Will was joking when he said Sammy could clean the car when it got really dirty." She paused, and the jurors could see the sadness in her face. "But the fact is, he did take it. Will is only 16. He had no legal right to make decisions about the car. It belonged to his father, an adult, and he insisted we press charges. So we did. Sammy has undoubtedly had a hard life. No guidance, bad decisions, bad company, and things out of his control have brought him here today. Despite all this, his actions, whether on purpose or not, have brought him here. He has past felony convictions. If he's convicted this time, it'll be his third, and the law says 3 strikes and you're out, or in this case, in for life. The law was here before I came to this state, but ladies and gentlemen, it is the law, and as a court officer, I must see it followed. If you can, be kind. I feel sorry for him. I have a life sentence of my own." She paused, and the judge frowned. Neither he nor Hardy understood her. "Most of you know that the defense lawyer is my husband. We're separated but still married. I did something terrible to him, something he can't forgive. I cheated on him, hurting everything he values. It's been almost a year and he won't talk to me. I've tried everything to speak to him, to ask for another chance. I've almost given up hope. I've sentenced myself to a life without hope or happiness. It's different, but I feel for this young man. I've done my duty. I've told you the facts. The judge will give you the details. All I ask is that you show some kindness to a young man who doesn't deserve to spend his life in prison. Thank you for your service, and may God guide your decisions." She looked at the judge, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution rests." An awkward silence followed before the judge banged his gavel. "Miss Cannaday, I don't know whether to praise you or scold you. Don't think I'm ignoring your little trick. That was your one chance. Try it again and you'll be in big trouble. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry." "All right then." He checked his watch. "Court is adjourned until 9 tomorrow morning." Gwen left, not daring to look at Hardy. If she had, she'd have seen him with his head in his hands, trying not to cry. "Good morning, Your Honor, Counselor, members of the jury. Yesterday, my opponent made her closing argument with facts and emotions. I agree with her on some points. The 3-strike law isn't always fair. It can be too harsh. I understand using it for very dangerous criminals, but to send a 23-year-old to prison for life for taking a car is just wrong. Look at him, ladies and gentlemen. He's scared. 12 strangers have the power of life or death over him. If he goes to prison, he'll hope for miracles at first. But after 5 years, he'll lose hope. By 10 years, he'll be a broken man. He'll be 33 with many more years to go. Yes, he took the car, but he thought he had permission. The teenage son was willing to say he thought it was okay. He was almost back with it when he was stopped. If the dad hadn't been so mad, the charges would have been dropped. He's a good kid, not ready to be a man. He took the car, admitted it, and this is just a small mistake blown out of proportion. Find him guilty of something, but don't ruin a good person. Think about the cost. It takes about $30,000 a year to house and care for a prisoner. It gets more expensive as they get older. Sammy might live 50 more years. It will cost the state between $1.2 and $1.6 million to punish him for taking a car without permission. Think of the good that money could do. Road improvements, new schools, rehab, and prevention programs. Does the law make sense to you now? He started back to his table, then turned to the judge and jury once more. With your permission, Your Honor, my opponent made some good points. She may feel she has a life sentence, but she's young, beautiful, and very rich. She can fly to Paris for lunch and be back by dinner. To her, it's like one of us going to a local diner. Sammy won't have that luxury. When those bars close, he's done forever. While she worries about fashion, he'll worry about surviving in prison. It's a big difference, don't you think? And if Sammy doesn't go to prison for life, he'll be like me. We both have life sentences of our own. His is for a car, mine is for a woman. We knew they were beyond our reach, but we had to hold on for a moment, even if it hurt us. That's our life sentence. Remembering how good it felt, knowing it could never last. Thank you, jury, for your time and effort. I don't envy your task. Defense rests, Your Honor. Damn you, Hardy Wilkes, she thought. If I had $1 for every tear I've shed for you, I'd have another fortune. No one mentioned her tears as the jury listened to their instructions and left the room. 5 hours later, the verdict came in. Sammy was found guilty of unlawful use of a vehicle, a misdemeanor. He was sentenced to 6 months in a minimum security prison where he would help maintain and clean state vehicles. The judge thought it was the right thing to do. Hardy had Sammy shake hands with everyone and thank them. The jurors, the judge, even Gwen, who surprised everyone by giving him a hug. The courtroom watched quietly as Gwen walked up to Hardy with her hand out. He took it right away. Good job, counselor. We saw justice today. And just so you know, I've decided to stop fighting the divorce. Take your freedom. I won't stop you. But if there were any chance for us, I'd beg you on my knees to talk to me again. Goodbye, Hardy. I love you. The judge saw and heard everything. It felt wrong. Everyone but Hardy could see it. He knew he had to look into these two. He couldn't delay it anymore. Greg wondered why an Alabama judge wanted to speak to him. The judge said it was urgent. Greg knew it was about Hardy or Gwen. He wasn't too worried about Hardy, but he was concerned about Gwen. She had told him through tears to tell Ivan it was over. He could hear the sadness and the sense of giving up in her voice. Are you sure, honey? I know he still loves you but won't admit it. It doesn't matter, Daddy. He can't forgive me. Every time he sees me, he thinks of Allan and me together. I can't live like this anymore. Greg felt a deep sadness for Hardy, Gwen, and himself. He had hoped they would get back together. He called the judge, and an old man's voice answered, Good evening. This is Greg Cannaday returning your call. Damn, boy, I was about to give up on you. The judge sounded annoyed. You don't know me, but I know your daughter and your soon-to-be ex-son-in-law well. I was the judge in her last case, and I saw she was glad she lost. Did you follow it? Greg had. There were already articles about changing the 3-strike law in Alabama. Even the most conservative papers agreed a little. There were photos of Hardy and Gwen in the local newspapers. Yes, I did. I was proud of them both. Good. Listen, son, I'm 74. I won't be around much longer. Before I go, I want to do something good. Those kids need to stay together no matter how much they fight it. I've got an idea. Will you help me? Greg thought about it. Did they really need to stay together? Should he meddle more in their lives? Yes and no. But he wasn't going to stop. I'm in, Judge. What's the plan? He listened and smiled. He couldn't wait to meet the judge in person. The plan might not work, but it would be fun to try. He flew down on Friday and spent the weekend with the judge. They made plans. They brought in Hildy and Joshua. They discussed, changed, and finally agreed on a plan. Hildy summed it up best. Well, things will be exciting next week. Greg visited Gwen and took her to the best restaurant in Birmingham. Honey, I can't tell you how proud I am of you. I had doubts when I sent you here, but you proved me wrong. You're not a spoiled rich girl anymore. You're a mature woman and a great lawyer. He didn't know how much his praise meant to her. It validated her hard work and determination. Thank you, Daddy. It means the world to hear you say that. He looked surprised that his approval meant so much to her. That being said, Gwen, I'm freeing you from your promise. Come back to Boston whenever you're ready. The partners and I agree you're an even bigger asset now, and your trust fund is ready. You can use it any time. She cried, emotions showing on her face. Then she replied with determination. Thanks, Dad, but I owe Paul 10 more weeks. I kind of like it here. Release the trust fund when I get back. I don't need the money now. Can I decide after the Escobar trial? Gwen, you're an adult. Do what you want. If you stay here for the rest of your life, I'd be sad but support you. I love you, baby. She started crying again. Damn it. I've cried so much this year. Everyone here thinks I'm related to Tammy Faye Baker. He gave her time to recover. Gwen, I regret meddling in your marriage, but I've got something to offer. It's up to you if you go for it. You don't know how many friends you have here. People call me Uncle Greg. It's nice, huh? She nodded. People had already called her Aunt Gwen at the restaurant. She had stopped trying to remember everyone. Spill it, Daddy. What plan do you have to mess up my life even more? He told her. She was shocked at first, but then saw the merits of the plan. Monday, she set things in motion. By Friday, it was all done. "Hell's fire and damnation!" Hardy shouted. He had been served divorce papers on the courthouse steps. Gwen had gotten a judge to move the case from Boston to Birmingham, where they were both legal residents. There was even a court date, and the reason listed was adultery. He called his lawyer in Boston, ranting. "I thought this was a done deal. The final decree was due in 2 weeks. What happened?" "Honestly, I'm not sure. All I know is I got a paper saying they want to change where the case is held, and the judge agreed. He seemed happy to get rid of the case. I heard about a divorce in Florida that took over a year with 2 lawyers involved. This one will break that record. In the end, they got back together. Good luck, Hardy. You'll get my bill in the mail." They were back to the beginning. Hardy had no choice. He got a new lawyer and started over. The first court date was coming up. His lawyer insisted he had to be there. Even the judge wanted them both present. Hardy didn't like it, but had to agree. "I don't know what to tell you. The judge is firm about this. He's not the usual judge. She's on medical leave. I hear he's an old grump. Best not to make him mad." That should have been a clue, but Hardy was too busy to notice. Hardy waited with his lawyer on the court steps. Gwen and her lawyer arrived. They stood separately, though close. Gwen nodded but didn't speak. Hardy felt a sinking feeling when Judge J.T. Harlan walked into the courtroom. After some quick formalities, the judge called the first case. "Wilkes v. Wilkes, Your Honor." "All right. Who wants to go first?" Gwen and her lawyer spoke up first. "We will, Your Honor." "Instead of an opening statement, I'd like Mrs. Wilkes to speak." Judge Harlan looked at Gwen over his glasses. "Go ahead." "Your Honor, I want to take back my petition." Hardy's lawyer held him back in his seat. The judge glared at him. "If you cause a scene, I'll delay this case for 6 months. Understand?" Hardy nodded. "I need to hear you say it." "Yes, Your Honor, I understand." "Good. Mrs. Wilkes, continue." "I want to take back my petition." "Why?" "Because I still want to be married to Mr. Wilkes." "That's not enough. You were separated because you cheated. Why do you want to stay married?" "I can't stop loving him, Your Honor. I tried. I even agreed to the divorce, felt it was the right thing. But being apart and other things made me realize the world isn't easy. The more I learn, the more I want to save my marriage. I've failed at everything except my job. I wasn't a good daughter or wife. I lied about what I wanted to get him and tried to control him to keep him. I didn't know what kind of man he was. In a way, he lied too. If I knew his past, I might not have chased him. I thought he was weak, so I disrespected him. Cheating was the worst part. Only under stress did I see his true self. Even when he had a chance to hurt me, he was sorry for the one hit." Judge Harlan believed her. "Mrs. Wilkes, do you think he can love you again? You hurt him badly. I've heard he did more than just slap you when he found out. Can you live with that?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, Your Honor. I think he's ashamed of what he did, and I won't give him a reason to do it again." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkes." He turned to Hardy. "Mr. Wilkes, do you want to say something?" His lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client doesn't want to speak. He wants the divorce, but changes the reason from cheating to irreconcilable differences." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is that true?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Wilkes, stand up." "What's next?" Hardy thought as he stood. "Mr. Wilkes, did you love your wife before this happened?" "Very much, Your Honor, but that doesn't mean—" "Just yes or no." "Yes." "Do you hate her now?" "No, Your Honor, but just yes or no." "Yes, Your Honor." "Is your life better without her? Yes or no?" "No." "Do you miss her and what you had?" "Yes." "Now meet her halfway. Stand in front of me." They met in front of the judge. "Mr. Wilkes, look her in the eye and tell her you don't love her anymore. If you do, the divorce will go through." A minute passed. The judge grew impatient. Hardy finally spoke. "What's love got to do with it? I had a dog, a pit bull. It bit me once, hard enough for stitches. I still loved it, but never trusted it again. I want the divorce. Love isn't the issue. Trust is. I'm afraid she'll hurt me again." The judge sighed. "This isn't the time to talk about dogs or singers. Just tell her you don't love her and it's over." Hardy stayed silent. The judge grew more impatient. "Do it. We have other cases waiting. Make it quick." "Tell her!" Hardy tried to speak but couldn't get any words out. Gwen was shocked to see him with tears. It was the saddest and the sweetest thing she had ever seen. The judge let out a grunt. Well, in my opinion, this marriage can be saved. I order you to see a marriage counselor for at least 5 visits, and I'll review it afterwards. If after that, Hardy finally found his voice. Hold on a minute, JT. I won't. That's a $500 fine for interrupting me and swearing in my court. We have kids here. Now, as I was saying, a minimum of 10 sessions. Hardy was almost jumping up and down. If you think for 1 minute I'm going through with this nonsense, the judge slammed his gavel and it broke. Last warning. Be quiet or go to jail. Your fine is now $1,000. Where was I? Oh yes, a minimum of 20 sessions with a counselor you choose. Hardy turned and walked towards the door. Mr. Wilkes, come back here right now! He kept walking until he reached the door, which was blocked by 2 bailiffs and a deputy. The old bailiff tried to talk to him. Back off, Hardy. You could probably beat us. We're old and out of shape. That's why we have court duty. But we have these tasers, and I don't think you can beat all 3 of them. Now go back before JT has a fit. He looks angry enough already. We're asking you nicely, so please go back. Hardy looked at them and felt his anger fade. He turned and walked back to the judge. JT waved his broken gavel at Hardy. One more word and you're in jail. Do you understand? Good. Now get a counselor, set up appointments, and Hardy, if you miss one, you'll be in jail tonight. Got it? Hardy nodded, went back to his table, and whispered to his lawyer. The lawyer shook his head, but then gave in. Judge, Mr. Wilkes wants me to say something. Remember, these are his words, not mine. Can I continue? JT nodded. Sir, he wants you to know he has lost all respect for you as a judge. He thinks this misuse of the legal system is a shame. He refuses to go to so many counseling sessions and would rather go to jail for contempt. The lawyer looked scared, waiting for the judge to explode. For a moment, Gwen thought the judge might have a heart attack. He went pale, then red, then purple. He couldn't speak for a few seconds. When he finally did, he was practically screaming. Sir, your client is an idiot. Fine. Now is convenient. Bailiff, take Mr. Wilkes to the county jail, now. Mr. Wilkes, you are the most stubborn person I've ever met. Think it over. I'll see you in a few days to check if you've changed your mind. If not, you'll stay in jail. Want to apologize now? Hardy grinned. I apologize, JT, for almost giving you a heart attack. You should take it easy. You might die before you visit me. Then what? The judge was so mad he was hitting his desk with his shoe. Get him out! And get me another gavel. Court is in recess for 20 minutes. Mrs. Wilkes, can I have a moment with you in my office? You don't need your lawyer. Gwen helped him into his office. He was still angry. Try to help someone and this is what you get. Stubborn, arrogant, the judge muttered for a few minutes. He looked up. Sorry, darling. I didn't think he'd get this mad. Well, Judge, you did kind of push him and he doesn't like being pushed. Are you really going to keep him in jail? No. I'll let him cool off for a few hours, then talk to him. Maybe we'll both be calm enough to understand each other. Still want to go through with it? Yes, sir. Offer him 10 sessions to start, but tell him there might be more. Let him pick the counselor, that might help. She turned to go. Looking back, she gave a parting comment. I don't know what's in this for you, sir, but thank you. And Judge, tell him I still love him no matter how angry he gets. Will Rob Williams, the High Sheriff of Jefferson County, was about to go to lunch. A county sheriff in most southern states has a lot of power. They know who the good guys, the bad guys, and the idiots are. Pretty much nothing happens without them knowing. As he was leaving his office, he saw a prisoner being taken to the cells. The man wasn't restrained, which was against the rules. He walked over to see who was escorting him and make a note to talk to them later. The man looked familiar. Well, if it isn't hard-ass Wilkes, I heard you were back. I've been meaning to look you up, but you know how it is. Busy protecting and serving. Did someone finally catch you? He grinned widely and reached out to shake Hardy's hand. Good to see you, Will Rob. How's Myrtle? Still too good for you? Yeah, but after 30 years, marrying down doesn't bother her as much. I'll tell her you asked. Here to see a prisoner? Hardy's grin got even wider. Not exactly. I am the prisoner. You shouldn't have backtalked your father-in-law, the deputy said. You made JT angry enough to put you in jail? I need to hear this. Deputy, I'll take him from here. Come on, let's go eat while you tell me what happened. Don't worry about JT. He'll be in court all day, and I'll have you back before he can gloat. They spent an hour and a half at lunch catching up. The first hour was full of happy memories and stories about friends who were no longer around. But the last half hour got more serious. They talked briefly about Hardy's marriage. It's a real shame. I know her from work. She's a top lawyer with the best win record in the office. Everyone knows you're married to her. They call her Mrs. Tough behind her back because she's so tough. Most people would rather settle than face her in court. Plus, she's very good-looking. Did you know she took the Escobar case? We'll keep an eye on her when the trial starts next month, but you know how it is. Don't worry, Will Rob. I got it handled. The sheriff frowned. Not my place to tell a man not to look out for his wife. I'm not asking, so don't tell me anything. Just be careful. Are you carrying? Not yet. I got my permit a month ago. By next week, I'll have my Smith .40 on me. What Will Rob said next surprised Hardy. You know she carries? A .380 in her purse. She's a really good shot, too. I've seen her at the range. Gwen? Guns? He never knew she was into them. Another thing he didn't know about his wife. They reluctantly went back to the jail. Hardy was calm as the doors clanged shut. He was in a cell with 6 other inmates. JT came by around 6, ready to accept an apology and take him out to dinner. Instead, he found Hardy sitting on one side of the cell, 4 inmates on the other side, and 1 lying on the floor, unconscious. What happened here? Hardy tried to grin through his swollen split lip. His left eye was swelling and he had a lump on his jaw. You know how it goes, JT? We argued over football. They were Auburn fans and I shouted, "Roll Tide." But I had to admit they had a great season. To top it off, did you know the jailer went to Ole Miss? He called us names and made us talk politics. Then he sprayed us with pepper spray. The judge shook his head. Hardy, that mouth of yours is going to get you killed one day. Have you calmed down yet? Ready to listen to reason? Maybe make a deal? Hardy's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. JT, as much as I love the company here, and I must say the macaroni and cheese was amazing tonight, I'd like to sleep in my bed. But if you bring up 20 sessions again, I'll ask what's for dessert. Don't make me mad again, boy. That speech this morning really annoyed me. Remember, I kept you out of jail when you were younger. If that recruiter hadn't been a friend, you'd have done 3 to 5 in Huntsville instead of 4 years with the military. Hardy knew he was wrong. Sorry, JT, I know how much I owe you and Will Rob, but it still annoys me to have her pushed on me. I just want it to be over. I promise you'll get it one way or another. But you need to talk to her, get closure, as the shrinks say. Here's the deal. 10 sessions, you pick the counselor. After that, I'll go by what they recommend. If they say it's over, it's over. If they say you need to keep going, we'll talk it out before I decide. Best offer you're going to get. Take it or enjoy jail breakfast tomorrow. I hear the powdered eggs aren't that bad. Hardy took the deal. JT drove him back to his truck, telling him not to waste time and have the name of the counselor on his desk by next Friday. Gwen was thrilled. Hardy agreed to 10 sessions. He had a counselor in mind, someone from his past. That was good. She hoped he would feel comfortable and open up. He promised in an email to let her know the time of the first appointment. It seemed he still didn't want to talk face-to-face. She could accept that for now. She noticed the car when she pulled into her apartment complex, a shiny vintage Cadillac convertible, maybe from the early 70s. More interesting were the people in the car. A young black man in his early 20s dressed very nicely in a suit behind the wheel. An older white woman, equally well-dressed, in the passenger seat. When Gwen got out of her car, the man was standing by her. She admired his grace and appearance. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you Mrs. Wilkes?" Immediately on guard, she nodded. "Please, could you speak to the lady in the car? She has trouble moving and is a bit proud about it. We won't take much of your time. She's been excited to meet you." The man seemed so honest and straightforward that she agreed. The older woman looked at her anxiously and then put on a pair of thick glasses. She broke into a big smile. "It's her, Marcus. If you had auburn hair, you would look just like her. Don't you think?" "I agree," Marcus said. "The resemblance is uncanny," Daisy said. Gwen was confused. "With all due respect, ma'am, what do you mean?" Daisy gave Gwen a stern look, like a teacher who was not happy. You, of course. Has anyone ever told you that you look just like your grandmother? You knew my grandmother? Virginia Howe? Gwen asked. Child, I'm her little sister, your great aunt. Aren't you going to invite us in? I know you grew up in the north, but my goodness, leaving an old lady in the sun? Marcus, help me. Marcus, who cared for Daisy, said, Yes, Miss Daisy, I'm getting your cane now. Marcus, behave. That joke stopped being funny years ago. He felt bad and said, Sorry, Aunt Daisy. Sometimes I can't help myself. It's too fun to trick strangers. You should see your face, Aunt Gwen. Daisy slowly walked with Marcus's help and her cane. They sat down and Gwen served tea. My great aunt. I'm sorry, but I didn't know you existed or I would have found you sooner, Gwen said. Daisy waved her hand. Not to worry, child, I'm here now. I blame your mother. She didn't let your father keep in touch with us. Here, look at this. She handed Gwen an old photo dated 1967. It showed a young girl with a big smile, fancy hair, and a nice dress. Gwen held it up to a mirror and saw that Daisy was right. They looked very alike. I wish I could have known her, Gwen said. Daisy handed her another photo of a woman in her late 40s holding a child of about 5. That's you with her, at a family reunion. You were quite a handful, but never mean. You followed her everywhere and called her Gam Gam because you couldn't say Grandma. She loved you very much. Gwen sighed. I wish I could remember her. You can, child, in your heart. She worried about how you would turn out since she and your mother never got along well. She never trusted her, Daisy said. Reflecting on how her mother turned out, Gwen thought her grandmother was right. Marcus, please get the books, Daisy said. Marcus went to the car and came back with 3 large books and a Bible. What are those? Gwen asked. Daisy smiled. This is the result of 50 years of research. It's your family history. You can't keep them, but Marcus has it all on a computer. It'll tell you more than you ever wanted to know about your ancestors. Here, let me show you this. It was a family portrait. Mother, father, son, and 2 daughters. That's your great-grandmother and great-grandfather with your grandmother, me, and Wilkes, our brother. I have a great-uncle? Sadly, he died young in a war in Korea. He never married. You're the only grandchild left in the family. What about your family? Gwen asked, noticing a large ring on Daisy's finger. Daisy looked sad. Sadly, we never had children. We adopted a boy from a distant cousin. Here, this is a picture of him and his family. The photo showed a young couple with a baby, looking happy and full of hope. He was our everything. My husband loved him so much. They all died in a car accident. My husband never got over it. Daisy wiped her eyes, still hurting from the memory. So you see, child, you're the last of the Howes. It's sad to see such a great family line end. Gwen felt deep sadness for Daisy. She knelt in front of the old lady and hugged her gently. Daisy's shoulders shook, but she then pushed Gwen back softly. Look at me. I must look silly, but I'm so glad to meet you, Daisy said. They spent 3 hours talking. Daisy loved showing Gwen their family history. She showed a picture of a young man in a Confederate uniform. This is your great-great-great-great-grandfather, Alexander Howe. He was a major and survived the siege of Vicksburg. I have his journal. It was an awful time. He even had to kill his horse for food. He was honored for bravery twice before the surrender. Then Daisy held up another picture of a Union soldier. This is Gregory Stowe Canaday, the man who took Alexander's surrender. And yes, you're related. He's your great-great-great-great-grandfather, too. Your dad is named after him. They became friends after the war, and that led to your family opening a law office here. Gregory wanted to stop destroying and start helping people. Gwen was amazed. Wow, I went from being an only child to being related to so many people. It's a wonder I'm not related to my husband. Daisy smiled. Well, actually, Alexander's sister married Francis Wesley Wilkes, your husband's great-great-great-great-grandfather. That makes you something like 14th cousins once removed. Gwen's mouth dropped open. Then she burst out laughing. When she recovered, she apologized. Sorry, Aunt Daisy, but I just realized I'm a true Southern stereotype. I married my cousin. That made Marcus and Daisy laugh, and Gwen joined in. When they recovered, Gwen asked how Daisy got so much information. I was a history major at Bama, taught high school history for 40 years. Most of the older stuff I got from visits, courthouse records, family Bibles, and local stories, Daisy explained. When Marcus joined us, his computer skills were a big help. Let me show you something, he said. He pulled out an old family Bible. See these pages in the back filled with writing? Old Bibles often came with blank pages so families could write down important events like births and deaths. These records are still legally accepted proof of birth and age. Look here, he pointed. He turned to the last page. It recorded the birth of her grandmother, her father, and then her. It was the last entry in the book. This is our family Bible, handed down from my father. When I pass away, it will become yours. There are still some blank pages. I hope you fill them with names of the next generation. Gwen started crying. After some encouragement, she told everyone her sad story. She was afraid there might never be another name added. Daisy surprised her by speaking up. Snap out of it, girl. I'm not judging, but you've made some bad choices. Fix it if you can or move on. If you want your man back, go after him with everything you've got. If you need help, ask for it. Look at all the family you have around you. She pointed at the books. Gwen smiled. Thanks, I might need to take you up on that. Am I related to everyone in Birmingham? Child, you could close your eyes, throw a rock, and hit someone you're related to. She grinned a mischievous grin that only the elderly could pull off. And I'm not just talking about white people. Your cousin Marcus here could be really useful. She looked back and forth between them. All right, I need to know. How did this happen? It seems Alexander had a connection with a woman who turned out to be his great-great-grandmother. And by connection, I mean he owned her, and saying no wasn't an option. Gwen covered her mouth in shock. It wasn't all bad. It seems he cared enough about her after his wife died to never remarry. She stayed with him after the war by choice. She had 3 of his children. One died at birth, another from cholera. But one, his great-grandfather, survived and had 7 children. We discovered all this after Marcus came to me, researching his own family. I had the journals of both Alexander and Beth. We found a part where she seemed to accept the relationship, saying she was thankful for the Niagara Jess, for relieving her of her need to perform her wifely duties, which her delicate constitution couldn't handle. We did DNA tests, and it proves we're related. She looked proudly at Marcus. He's halfway through getting his master's degree in history. I've made him my heir because he's following in my footsteps, for forgiving our ancestors, and for being a loving person to an old, lonely lady. He deserves it, and after years of resisting, he finally accepted. Gwen was very touched, realizing how you can find love in the strangest places. They left, after making her promise to visit often. She helped Daisy to the car, listening to her complain as they went. I think I made a mistake giving Marcus this car. It was the first new car my husband ever bought. I hated it then, and it hadn't run in 20 years. I didn't think Marcus could fix it. But it took him 6 years, and now it looks brand new. I'd rather ride in my Mercedes, but if he's driving, this is all he'll take. Gwen snuggled into bed that night, thinking how great family is. She wasn't thinking about all the people she had managed to put in jail over the last 10 months, like Vicente Escobar, Ronnie Wilkes, or Allan Hovis, the snake. But they all were thinking of her, to be continued. Wait for part 2. Hey audience! If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.